Welcome in, Irish Breakdown. I mean, look, we both so used to leading. Welcome
I
into
just said, Sean, you're gonna leave.
Welcome into the Irish Breakdown
We just talked
podcast.
about this.
We did. My name is Sean Davis.
But hey, you're doubling up today, so I appreciate it. It's all
that
good.
man is the editor. We call you the editor in chief or just editor?
I'm the owner or publisher.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He
So
threw the
over
big
2.
word on me, guys.
Over 2.
Big word.
But I will leave titles. I'm just Brian here.
This
I'm
is
just
the CEO publisher.
Yes.
Of Irish Breakdown, Brian Driscoll. Of course, you guys know you're excited to talk about practice, and there are a lot of things we could talk about, but they didn't give us that much time to observe. So we'll give Brian Driscoll an opportunity to talk about that. Before you do that, make sure for all of our great intel, you go over to boards.irishbreakdown.com for all of our great stories, recruiting intel, visitors coming up during the spring, and everything you need to know surrounding the Notre Dame football program. It's ready for you over at irishbreakdown.com and boards.irishbreakdown.com. You can also get some nice stuff, some nice hoodies. Look at the hat and stuff that B. Drisk is rocking today.
This is an ND hat right here, man. I got this on campus.
You can go to the store right there, irishbreakdown.com, and get some impressive Irish Breakdown merchandise as well. Don't forget our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe if you already haven't at Irish Breakdown. He's holding the little white hat. I have that hat as well.
This is a new one. It's actually white and green.
Oh,
not the white and blue.
Not the blue one. I have absolutely. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. That thumbs up, smash it for us. It helps us greatly with views. And then share and let everybody know. Leave your comments. We appreciate your comments. Practice today. Beatrice. They only gave us 5 periods. And I felt like it was the biggest tease in the world, especially knowing that the young guns were going to be the quarterbacks throwing today. To only tease us with 5 periods. It's something else. But what stood out to you from what we were or what you were able to see?
Well, just to give some context of what Sean's talking about, we were told at the beginning of practice today that Steve Angeli, as well as Junior Tuihalamaka, would not be a practice day because they're sick. And we were kind of joking up in the booth, like, they had to have told Steve, you can't be at practice because there's no way Steve Angeli is going to wake up with a bellyache and be like, nah, I'm not going to go today. I'm going to let Kenny and CJ get all those reps. No, that would have, I guarantee you that was a, go home, go back to your dorm, or go back to your house and lay down because you can't be around the rest of your team with whatever you got. So I'm positive that was the case. But that meant they were down to 2 quarterbacks today, and it was just CJ and Kenny. So we got a chance to see them take a lot of reps, Sean. But, they started off with a little team period, which I'll get into. And then after that, it was like a ton of special teams. And so we didn't really get a chance to see a whole lot. They started doing some teamwork as soon as we were leaving. But all I got to see was one swing pass to Jadarian Price, and that's it. We were out the door. So not a ton to see today, but we will talk about some of that stuff that we saw. They did give us kind of a four plays ones and then 4 plays twos of team, but it was not everyone. I mean, we didn't see Riley Mills. We didn't see Howard Cross. We didn't see trying to think of some other guys we didn't see. It was Chris Mitchell wasn't out there. Jaden Thomas wasn't out there. Not all these guys are injured. It's just that's just kind of they've always done that, Sean. I mean, and every coach does that. It's like, look, let's get through this team period. I really want to see so and so for a few plays, and so we saw some of that kind of those type of things. But it was nice, but most of it was just guys running around. We'll talk specifics of things we saw, but when you talk about the quarterback, Sean, I mean, it just was an opportunity really for CJ and Kenny to get some work in. And what we saw won't do anything. It's not moving the needle, but there's going to be work being done after we left that's going to be impactful. And I'm very, very curious to follow up with some sources I have tonight to see, kind of how the Young Bucks look, because this is the thing. We talked about, it would be unwise and unfair if the coaches don't give Kenny and Steve chances to work with the first group, and maybe they won't moving forward, but for today you had your chance. So whatever circumstances led you here today, you had your chance. And and it's going to be important for them to step up. With what we saw, I mean, you can only evaluate it so much. So they had a team period to begin, Sean. It was good on good. I use that loosely because, as I said, there's a lot of guys not out there today. We saw first play, they had a really nice inside zone run, really nice push from the interior of the line, really nice push from actually, if I remember correctly, I believe it was Billy Shrouth and Tosh Baker's side that got the push. It was the run was behind them. Really nice push. I think it was Billy got up to the second level real effectively. Got a real nice, about 10-yard run on play 1. Play 2, Kenny drops back, sees the slide come open real quick, boom, hits the slide. Next play, Jack Kaiser and Jordan Patel blow up the inside zone run. Just blow it up. And then the fourth play, it was actually, I kind of liked the ball. I mean, it wasn't really open, but Kenny tries to bang a backside dig to Micah Gilbert, who is working with the ones, who's had a really good spring camp so far. Not just because of the 4 clips they put out in practice yesterday, but like we've talked about that, how good Micah Gilbert looks. And it was well covered by Clarence. I mean, it was actually a pretty good ball. It was well covered by Clarence Lewis, and he made a play to break it up. And that's what they did on that first team group. And so Clarence Clarence is filling in for Benjamin Morrison, and they're leaving the other guys over there. Before we move on to what I saw from the second team, Sean, I do want to apologize to people in advance. We no longer have the secret IB studio in South Bend, so I can only be here today. This is the last week of construction, so y'all are going to hear some banging and stuff. I apologize in advance. When I'm not talking, I'll try to mute myself as much as possible, but you're just going to hear some of that today, y'all. I really do apologize. Second group, Sean, is a little bit, CJ was with the second group, and let me pull up the sequence because I forget I remember the 4 plays, but I forget which one they ran first. I believe it was a throw from CJ on a hitch was first, and then the run was second. No, there was a run on the first play. That's right. Boubacar whooped Emil Wagner off the line, just completely completely shucked him, got to the ball, blew it up, blew a knee. Didn't blow it up like physically because you're not allowed to tackle. It wasn't a tackling period. It's a thud drill. But he'd have been there right there to tackle Neas Williams in the backfield, and there wasn't anything Neas Williams was going to be able to do about it. There wasn't anything Reggie Bush could have done about it. There wasn't anything Rocket could have done about him. He was there so quick. It was going to be a TFL. Next play, CJ felt the pressure, caught the ball, saw Jaden Osbury coming on a blitz. It was a great blitz by Jaden. He timed it perfectly, got through quick. CJ gets it out real fast out to Cam Williams. Cam Williams catches it, and you think he's about to square it up. And then all of a sudden, here comes Micah Bell in the corner and got him. Next play, they came out through again. They have this little under screen that they run. It's like a boot screen. I'll have a breakdown of it on the board. That's one of the things I'm going to break down on the show that's coming out a little bit today, but I'll definitely have it broken down even further in a further breakdown because I'm doing a run game breakdown tonight. That'll have some of that stuff on there. But on that, you watch the play kind of start to happen. And thinking, I think this under route's about to come open. And all of a sudden, Micah Bell is like shot out of a cannon. Just boom, flies to the ball. The speed part was like impressive to see, but it wasn't surprising. What I liked is he read it. It was run action away from him. The under route was coming from the opposite side. He saw it, jumped it, and just blew it up. I mean, just blew the play up. So it was like back-to-back really good plays from him. And then the next play, CJ throws a really nice ball to Cam Hart on a stop route. About the only place that Cam has a chance to play it, but Christian Gray was all over him and broke it up. So that's what we saw from those 4 plays. Just a couple guys that stood out. Don Schuler moving really well right now. I mean, just really. And it's not so much when I say guys moving well, yes, part of it means he's running well. But moving well at this level, Sean, more means, hey, you're a scholarship athlete at Notre Dame. You should run relatively well. It's more about a free-flowing way of playing, meaning he's not thinking a whole lot. He's reacting more, which means he's really moving well to the football because he's not thinking a ton. Now, for all I know, he may be making a million mistakes. I don't know. I don't know the calls. But I've said all along, I would rather you make a mistake 100 miles an hour because I can correct the mistake than be a guy that's like timid and not sure what to do. Adon looks like a guy that knows what he's doing without knowing what the assignments are. He moves like a guy that's playing confidently. That's huge for him in the defense. But this is the first time that I've seen Micah Bell in a Notre Dame uniform where I'm like, yeah, he's what we hoped he would be on that play. Like, you saw the talent on the 2 plays in a row, actually, where you're like, yeah, that's why you recruit Micah Bell, because he flew to the ball, man. And so it was good to see that. You seen the young quarterback slinging it around, and it was a nice competitive period, as much as it can be on 4 plays with ones, 4 plays with twos, and no tackling. But the defense is really flying around, man. And I'll just say this overall, Sean, I've heard from a couple sources that the offensive pace in practice is really quick, and we saw that today. Now, normally, if I didn't have the context of sourcing, I would have just been like, it was a tempo period. But from what I'm told, like, the defense is being really pushed by the tempo, and they like it because they like the fact that the offense is challenging them. But that the tempo, the pace of practice is really sharp with this group.
Remember the first practice on March the 7th? That's something that both of us reacted to, and that was the fact that, the offense seems to be having an effect on the defense because the defense is in the middle of install, but they're not used to this tempo. Like, we noticed that. And Denbrock was talking to the receivers after they were making successful plays, like, dude, get back to the huddle. What are you doing? Get back to the huddle. Like, this is what we do. And so I'm happy to hear that, because it seems like there's a response thing going on, to where offense had something early going and the defense has responded. I talked to several recruits this weekend, and several of them, BD, said, yo, the defense at every level was making plays. Like, everybody was making plays. They were running fast, hitting hard. And I'm not just talking about defensive recruits, offensive recruits that I spoke with as well pointed out the defense. So that just lets you know, with what you saw today, that's a tremendous trend. The expectation, we all knew that there was more talent, physical talent coming into the defense. But to hear a guy like Micah Bell starting to pick up the mental side of things is even more
like
encouraging.
I said, just those 2 plays is what it looked like, right? And I've told you, and I think I've said on shows, like, what I've been told by sources is they're grooming him to be that next nickel, right? That's what they're kind of grooming him to be. The interesting thing is, this is kind of how Denbrock is. Anyone that watched LSU last year knows that they kind of work with a little bit of pace. They're not like Oregon under Chip Kelly, but they work with some tempo. They don't go slow. They're not just up there like taking their time forever. Now, they'll do some, look at me stuff. They'll get up there, push the tempo, bam, clap, see what defense does, and look for a play call. But they're working with some tempo. The interesting thing is that actually plays into this particular defense's hands, and that's what you're seeing from some of this, because this is a really fast defense. So yeah, you better hope you can maybe catch them off guard. But this stuff, just lining up and being able to play ball, that's going to play into their hands, which then in turn pushes the offense, because then the offense has to then be, okay, well, we're not able to beat them with tempo, this particular defense, which is one of the best in college football. Because here's the thing about Mike Denbrock. The practice the defense he goes against every single day is significantly better than what he's gone against the last 2 years, which is going to give him a real good sense of who they are and where they are. And so to me, that'll help make up for the fact that they don't have a Malik Neighbors at receiver. They don't have a Brian Thomas at receiver. So and what it requires you to do is, okay, I just can't rely on scheme and tempo. I've got to know how to win. And I talked about this in the show a couple of weeks ago. One of the big questions I have about do they know how to win? They're going to have to learn how to win if they want to not get dominated in practice every day. That means, how do I win off the line against these guys? And you say, well, there's no Benjamin Morrison. Look, guys, Clarence Lewis started in the college football playoff game as a freshman cornerback. This isn't some bum, kid, right? I mean, Chance Tucker, they had to beat Washington to get Chance Tucker. And then, of course, Christian Gray and Jade Mickey. So there's still going to be that test. It's not going to be the same as Benjamin Morrison being out there, but they're still going to get tested. But you can just see the competitiveness in those periods. I mean, the defense really flies around. You could see the confidence that this group has just in how they go about their business every day, Sean. And that's something we picked up on most practices. And the thing I love about it is that makes the offense way better. When you have to, like, that's what I'm going against every day. And, let's see how we handle it. Right. And that it's good to see.
All right. Today, we told you guys we would give you a very special Wednesday mailbag. Before we go over to that, is there any golden nuggets you might have that outside of what you saw that you feel like might have come, or some intel you might have heard that led up to what you saw today?
Well, the only thing is kind of what I had mentioned is I wanted to see it with my own eyes first, because we haven't really seen like a team period yet since the first practice. Like the last 4 or 5 practices, we've seen him go through drills and a couple one-on-ones, but no like team. So it was nice to see him do some team stuff. But just the big thing is the offensive pace is a lot more aggressive than it's been. And then, of course, in interviews afterwards, we didn't see this play out in practice, but something that was talked about is Jeremiah Love the last couple days has been working more with the receivers. And this is now something that's a manifestation of what I had talked about. I believe you and I talked about this when I was told this a couple weeks before camp. I was told by a pretty good source at Notre Dame that they're going to use the new staff loves all the new coaches loves Jeremiah Love and how they can use him, but they're also excited because if he's by far your best running back, yeah, you'd like to move him around, but he's your best running back. He's your only stud running back. But the presence of Jadarian Price, and even to a degree, like, Jabron Payne and eventually Keedron Young and Aeneas Williams, they feel like they don't have to have Jeremiah as a pure running back. And so there was going to come a point in time this season where Jeremiah was going to start cross-training a little bit, and I'll explain the reasons why that's important in a minute. But it's really it's been sped up for several reasons, partly just, receivers not being completely healthy, small part of it, but it's more about, okay, we feel really good about where Jeremiah is with his knowledge of the offense at running back, but also we got this dude, Jadarian Price. And so, Sean, you and I have seen with our eyes those two guys on the field together in practice. We have seen that. And the reason you are cross-training Jeremiah and not just putting him out there for some screen stuff is not because you want to move him, but it's I'm sorry. Tommy Gunn just had the most hilarious mistype ever. He goes morons into and out of the backfield. He meant to say motions, and it just kind of distracted me. But the point is, if I just have we've talked a lot about 21 personnel is limiting. It's great to have. If I had this backfield, I'd be in 20 and 21 personnel at least 5-10 times a game. But there's only so much you can do with it if you have 2 pure backs. Well, the thought that they have as a staff is we can use Jeremiah beyond just typical move a running back into the slot, jet sweep, screens, and wheel routes. That they actually want to teach Jeremiah some downfield route stuff. So that way, when they're in 21 personnel, if you treat it like 21 personnel, they've got their 11 personnel concepts to go to. If you treat it like 11 personnel, they can hurt you with the 21 personnel concept. So essentially what that means is this. In 21 personnel, there's a lot of different things you can do with who's going to get the football in the run game. Like you can do inside zone stuff with an orbit motion and throw a swing out there. Depending on who the quarterback is, you can even run some speed option stuff out of that. I mean, imagine that. You got Jadarian to your right, Jeremiah to your left. You do a quick zip motion. You do a ride that inside zone with Jadarian as Jeremiah is going around the side, and all of a sudden you're pulling that sucker out. You're getting out the gate, and boom, you're basically running a speed option type of concept. So you've essentially ran triple option out of shotgun. Right? There's jet sweep stuff where you can get Jadarian as kind of your lead blocker. Remember, think of the Music Motor City Bowl. Goodness gracious. Sean, I am taking a nap as soon as this show is over. The Music City Bowl in 2014, when you had CJ Prosise on that jet sweep touchdown. Well, who was his lead blocker on the perimeter? It was Torian Folston. right? Well, Jadarian can do that kind of stuff. And then there's things you can do with Jadarian also still getting the football. You can run a bubble screen outside with Jeremiah to kind of suck away that slot coverage, and you're running read zone with Jadarian and Riley, or whoever the quarterback is. There's so many things you can do with that personnel if your second back can play like a receiver, meaning I can run my verts concepts, I can run my wide fade concepts, I can run my crosses, my overs, my quick game, I can run my out concepts. Like I can actually run our 11 personnel package, not all of it, but a chunk of it out of 21 personnel. It puts you in a major bind, and there are very, very, very few teams who can do that, because most teams catching back, the guy that catches the ball as the running back, is usually like a 5'9", 5'10" guy. Well, this is a 6'1" guy. It's a completely different type of athlete. And so they want to do a lot of stuff with Jeremiah. But the reality is you can't afford to take a guy like Jeremiah out of the backfield if you don't have a guy that's just as good. Somebody asked Jeremiah, what's the differences between you and Jadarian? And kind of laughs. He goes, I'm faster than Jadarian. He's like, that's about it. You know what I mean? I think Jadarian would probably be like, hold on a second. Are you sure about that, cuz? But the point is, their games they're both dynamic, explosive runners. Jadarian Price averaged 34 yards a kick return last year. Notre Dame got a transfer kick returner who was a first-team All-American that averaged 31 yards per kick return last year, right? So when you got two home run guys like that, it then gives you the freedom to then do more with Jeremiah. And that's what Notre Dame is starting to do. So this is the time to teach him that. Don't wait till the fall and take away running back reps from him in the fall to teach him those things. When you get to the fall, it's, dude, you know what you're doing. And now you can really roll. And so that's what you're starting to see them ramp up a little bit here in the middle of spring practice. And Jeremiah even said, like, the plan is to just be able to, if they want to install some stuff with me, then now we have the foundation to do it. But he also made clear, I'm still a running back, because I don't know how certain people may cover it. They may try to act like he's switching positions or whatever. It's he's a running back that they're cross-training so they can get him the ball in a lot more ways, which puts a huge burden on defenses. Because how do you handle a running quarterback like Riley Leonard, a home run running back like Jadarian Price, and you've also got Jeremiah Love on the field at the same time? I mean, like, that's the kind of stuff. Like one of the plays that LSU likes to have, Sean, is they like to do that inside zone read and bring their tight end or like a slot receiver underneath, and it's a read zone. So if he pulls, he's getting out there. Well, they would throw that to the tight end a lot, gain 20, 22 yards. Imagine if you're throwing that ball to Jeremiah Love, and then all of a sudden teams start overreacting to that. Riley starts rolling out. They fly out to Jeremiah because they're panicked about Jeremiah. And what does that leave, Sean? This huge, giant crease right there for Riley Leonard to run through, or Kenny Minchie or Steve Angeli or CJ Carr, right? Mm-hmm. So it's easy to get excited about that stuff.
This is something that, just listening to you talk about that and combining that with what we spoke about earlier offensively with the tempo, coaching that position as you have, how does that impact what we need to see from the development in that wide receiver room? Marcus Freeman has talked about not expecting guys to just automatically transfer their stats, say from Chris Mitchell, what he did at FIU. We might not even need that level of production. We would love to have that level of production in Notre Dame, but based upon the amount of weapons that Notre Dame has, the weight might not be on Chris Mitchell to put up those stats, but to be more effective and efficient as far as big plays and yards after the catch. But for you, how is that going to benefit the quarterback and wide receiver room when you see tempo becoming more of the norm than what we've seen previously at Notre Dame?
I think as a receivers coach and as a receiver, tempo really does a lot to let me get into a rhythm. Like it's like basketball, Sean. I mean, you get those teams that run a lot, and when they get going, there's nothing you can do about it. I think back to the old Kentucky teams with Rick Pitino, like way back in the day before he started getting like all the stars. It's like, dude, they just be running up and down the court and just like, and then the them being shot makers and going tempo, then that sets up their press, and then that forces more turnovers. And then it's like you get into that zone, man, and it's just like, dude, I'm just, you know, you don't have time to think as a defensive player. So in a lot of ways, it helps with that. It helps get you into a rhythm. It usually means more plays. And if you run more plays, it means more opportunities to get touches, number one. And then number two, it means more opportunities for more guys to play, because one of the surprising things from last season, Sean, was when you look at like LSU's offense last season. I mean, they didn't run a lot of plays last year, and because number one, they scored so fast, but number two, their defense was on the field so much because their defense couldn't stop anybody. Well, it's a little different at Notre Dame because you are going to have a defense that can make stops. You can quickly go get on somebody, and that's how you can really overwhelm people like in a hurry. Is because you're just moving at such a pace that, man, it's like, whew, I just know how you keep up with it. And then if you have waves of guys you can throw at people, it just makes it harder to keep up. And so, you know, I think rhythm matters on offensive football a lot. I do. I think one of the things that you know, I said this before. I was a defender of Jared Parker in a lot of ways last year. But if you remember in post-game shows, what was my biggest complaint? There was like no rhythm to what they were doing. It was just like, you're just calling plays. Now they're well-designed plays, but they're not always called. And with Denbrock being a more experienced coach, he's going to be able to better understand the flow of it. I've already did one breakdown kind of showing an example of that. That was in a 2-minute situation against Notre Dame a couple of years ago where like they're going fast, but he's seeing things and he's already one step ahead. Oop, I love that matchup. Let's go right back to it and get our slot receiver matched up against their All-American safety because I know our guy can beat that guy. And so there's a level of confidence to it as well. And Mike Denbrock likes confident players. And Jeremiah is outwardly confident. I mean, you can hear it today. I mean, he's outwardly confident in a way where it's kind of, I mean, you've talked to the young man. You've seen us interview. I mean, he's confident, but it's not and that guy's really kind of full of himself. It's like he's exactly what you want an elite athlete to be. I'm pretty confident, but I also, you know, and I know that I can beat anybody I go against, but he's not a jerk about it, you know, and it's what you want a guy to be. But what people don't know is because he's a lot quieter and I mean, you saw the video where he's breaking down the game against USC. You know, Jadarian's like very mild-mannered and, yes, sir, I just thought I saw it opening and I just was going to take it out the back door. And he doesn't come across with the same outward confidence that Jeremiah has, but trust me, he does. I mean, hear people saying it. Wasn't it he said he was going to break one during the week? I mean, like USC's like, I'm going to break one this weekend. Isn't that how it went, if I remember correctly on that video? Like, well, that's a pretty confident kid on national TV, you know, like a week after losing a game, I'm telling my teammates, I'm calling my shot. I'm taking one back to the house this weekend. So they're both very, very confident kids. And Mike Denbrock, as you know, loves kids like that. Like that's what he wants. I want kids that demand the football with their presence, with their ability, with their confidence, because that's how he is. Right. And as a coach, if you're going to be that way, if you're going to have that swagger, you want players that have that swagger. And Jeremiah has that. And so, you know, whether you want to call him, you know, how they use Deebo Samuel, however you want to call it, he's going to be a guy that's a focal point of this offense. But the nice thing is because he is such and we talked about this when they signed him, because he can do so many things, you don't have to play him at the expense of Jadarian. And you don't have to play Jadarian at the expense of Jeremiah. The uniqueness of Jeremiah as a player allows you to play those two guys together. And they're going to feed off each other a bunch, Sean.
You know what's amazing?
Go ahead.
They can do that 2 times because they have the same thing with Keegan and Aeneas. The way 100%. Aeneas plays the game.
100%. Oh, yes. Now, Aeneas is more of the traditional second back. He's 5'10", you know, and he's a little bit of a different type of cat. But, like, the thing about it, though, is those two kids are going to be like a Jadarian and Jeremiah because it's like their swagger, their confidence, their relationship. It's like, that's my brother. We're both great. But you know how it is, Sean. It's also a competition. Oh, you want to take one for 50? Okay, watch what I'm about to do. You love that kind of stuff. Like you see these videos about like Jordan and Bird, and it's like they would all their best games almost always were in response to something. Somebody was Dominique's going off. All right, okay, Dominique, love you, man. You're a great player, but I'm about to show you what legends do. Oh, okay, J.R. Ryder, you know what I mean? Or Kevin Garnett, you want to run your mouth a little bit? The story about, Michael Jordan when Kevin Garnett starts running his mouth and J.R. Ryder's like, dude, shut up, but like, don't poke the bear, right? But that's the kind of thing is like, it's always in response to something. And these two kids can provide that for themselves. And we saw it a little bit in the bowl game. Jeremiah's going off or Jarian's going off. So what does Jeremiah do? Let me go make this highlight reel play and score a touchdown.
Man, Irish Breakdown podcast. That wraps up our spring practice report. And while you're doing that, make sure you tap in over at YouTube, subscribe, share, hit the like button, and then go to boards.irishbreakdown.com for all of our great intel, more breakdown. Like I said, the Mike Denbrock breakdown from over at LSU the last 2 years. Brian Driscoll did a fantastic job. 3 parts you don't want to miss. Go over to boards.irishbreakdown.com. Get all of that and more.
Halfway done with that stuff, Sean.
Man, it's so much and it's so fun. That's the thing about it, is you start to get excited. What Mike Denbrock reminds me of as we get ready to go on to our mailbag? He reminds me of when I used to coach 5th graders, the 5th graders, like during the summer in basketball. And it's like, ho hum, you're going to get some kids that want to play basketball, And then this one summer you come back and your kids come in and all of a sudden you're watching them do the layup line and go through drills and you see this one kid that's like, oh, he can really play. Uh-oh. I can actually, wait a minute. Let me pull out the blackboard. I can actually draw some plays now. I don't just have to say go out there and have fun. That's Mike Denbrock.
Yeah.
Like he sees the talent. He's like, now his creativity starts popping. He's already creative as far as getting this ball to his playmakers. But the more playmakers he sees, like you don't think after he saw Michael Gilbert live, that first practice, he's like,
Right.
I got Cam, I got him. Look, the excitement and the buzz and everything you talked about and how it's going to impact the quarterback room and the wide receiver room is authentic. And I can't wait to see it play out over the 24 season.
Well, Sean, we saw that at Cincinnati as well.
Yeah.
When he had the talent, you saw a more aggressive coach. It didn't take him 3 years at Cincinnati to become a more aggressive football coach. It took him 2, and then things really started kind of taking off in like years 3, 4, and 5. But really year 2 and then years 4 and 5 are really their best years because that's when he had the players. When he had a guy like Michael Warren, that run game got real creative and he had a mobile quarterback and he did some different things, you know what I mean? But they didn't have the really the dynamic weapons in the pass game. Well, then in 2020, they start getting a little bit more of that, and then of course in 2021, when everybody was healthy, because 2020, Alec Pierce got hurt and just some, COVID and all that kind of stuff. But then 2021, I got a home run back. I got dynamic receivers, and all of a sudden you see a much more explosive offense. And then, of course, at LSU the last couple of years, as some of those young receivers emerged with Malik Neighbors, you saw that offense just really become incredibly explosive. And so, those are the things you look at. When he's got the talent, he'll be aggressive. And, we'll see if he's got the talent. But that'll do it for that part of the show, Sean.
Yep, let's get to the mailbag right here. Coming up next, Sean Davis, Brian Driscoll, Irish Breakdown Podcast. All right, welcome back, Irish Breakdown Podcast. And this is the Notre Dame Football Mailbag, a special Wednesday edition of the Mailbag. Subscribe on YouTube to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Share, hit that like button. It helps us with our views for all of our great recruiting intel and information and breakdowns like Brian Driscoll's breakdown of the LSU Mike Denbrock offense. Go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's well worth the investment. Let's get to it, Brian. Let's get to it.
We got a lot of recruiting questions, but I want to start off with this one because this is the one you and I were kind of joking about.
Bobby S., thank you for the mailbag. Is it just me or does KK look like the smoothest wide receiver we have? He looks different when he runs. just a natural and smooth athlete? Can he find a role this year? Is he making any noise? This plays into not only what we talked about pre-show, but your conversation about players being able to have more opportunities with more tempo on offense.
Right. And also with some guys being out. A guy like KK Smith's like, and this is what I love. We talked about this before spring, Sean. Like, the depth of this team is, you may not want to miss too much time. You may be a veteran receiver, think I got something locked down, but do you really want to give KK Smith a couple days of work? Do you really want to give Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert and that kind of work? Or do you think you may want to answer the bell today and make sure that you're good to go? So, KK, I think people are kind of starting to recognize what I saw from him coming out of high school. Now, he's got to do it in games and all that other kind of stuff, but this is a kid who was a very underrated player. I think a lot of people weren't sure, how good of a pickup that was because he was a 3-star, flipped from Texas Tech, didn't have a great offer list. But he didn't have a great offer list because he was committed so soon. But that kid's film was excellent. His athleticism is excellent. He's a very smooth, natural pass catcher, still learning the intricacies of the game, but the skill set is there. Can he make noise this year? He's certainly physically capable of it. He's still coming back from the injury. It's just about whether or not he's going to be able to force his way on the field, which is not going to be easy because of how deep they are.
And I like that. I like hearing that. I love hearing Marcus Freeman talk about that, the different paths of guys at Notre Dame, and then also talking about his time at Ohio State when he was a player there that, they didn't have an expectation or a need for Ted Ginn to come in and play, but Ted Ginn forced his way on the field. And that's what you want when you get to that level of the vision of Marcus Freeman. When he first took over, he said, I don't want 1s and 2s. My vision is to have 1A and 1B at Notre Dame. And now we're starting to see that materialize. And when you can talk about a KK Smith, like, he looks pretty good. And you start to see Micah Gilbert and his plays during the spring he's having as a true freshman. This is what you expect under Marcus Freeman, the improvement in recruiting, the identification of talent. In the third year, you expect to see the manifestation of some of those things. And some of that is development and also, Brian, a great deal of patience from Marcus Freeman and his staff with those young players. Because you can sit here and say they could have rushed some guys. They could have played some guys, but they stuck to their overall plan. They stuck to the big picture, believing. And this is the amazing thing. You give a new coach usually 3 years to get everything installed and say, okay, this is when it's truly his program. Marcus Freeman never lowered expectations while building to that third year. Every year, his first year, he was like, no, we didn't meet expectations. Last year, we're better than this. We didn't meet expectations. And that same work ethic, along with the talent now, should be on a collision course for this football program, for them to be elevated and get into the college football playoffs and become a player in those playoffs. I'm excited, but KK Smith is just another example. We started to hear the buzz about KK when some bowl preparation is when we really started to hear, okay, KK Smith is doing some things out here on the field, and it's continuing into the spring. You just love what you hear. And that kind of lines up. How impactful do you think Mike Brown has been in this process?
Oh, very much so.
Oh, yeah.
And for two reasons. One is, obviously I think he's a good coach. Like, I was breaking down film last night, Sean, and I'm going back to, because like one thing, it's one thing to look at what LSU did last year and say, oh, that's the offense Notre Dame is going to run. But it's like, well, no, is there stuff that he only ran last year that we never saw before? And he ran because he's got Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and Notre Dame can't do that because they don't have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. And a lot of the stuff, though, you look back and like, okay, I saw him doing it 2021 at Cincinnati. I know they have guys can be as good as Trey Scott and your Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker and Alec Pierce and guys like that. Definitely at tight end. So then you start to see it. But like, I'm watching this post route, but then you're like, okay, well, those guys were NFL players playing in the AAC. How does it translate? And I'm watching a touchdown, and I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Trey Tucker. But I'm watching this guy run an ISO post route. What I mean by ISO post route is he knows it's one-on-one, me versus the corner. And watch him press the leverage and then just hardly widen that guy outside and then snap it to the post, and he's wide open. I'm like, that translates. if you have a good enough player, and they will. I mean, when Cam Williams starts doing that stuff, I don't know how you guard him. I really don't. Like, once Cam learns that part of playing receiver, I don't know how you guard him. I don't know how you guard Chris Mitchell if he can be a real precise route runner. You just have to be more physical than he is to beat him up at the line because he's only 180 pounds. I mean, that's the only hope that you have, right? And so those are the things that you'd see on film to say, yeah, his coaching is – these kids will take to coaching the way he does it, and it's going to be successful. But the second part of it too, Sean, is when you're Mike Brown, you're walking into this thing saying, I don't care who Jared Parker and Chancey Stuckey or Tommy Reese or whoever else thought was the best receiver or should have started. Guys, this is a fresh slate. I don't care if you're a freshman, senior, whatever. I'm going to play the best guys. I'm going to play the game the right way, that care about their craft, that do the work, that are accountable, that are all these things. That's who's going to play. I don't care who recruited you. I don't have any recruits here. I didn't recruit any of y'all. So I don't have favorites. You can't use that against me. I didn't recruit anybody on this roster right now. And he didn't. He didn't play a hand in anybody on this roster outside of, you could maybe say, the transfers. So there's that aspect of it too, Sean, where Mike Brown can play a role because hey, look, I got to bring it, man. I don't have the rapport I had with the previous guys. I got to earn it with him. And so everybody's on the same page. And I think those are things that can be impactful. You get to use that arrow once. Right, Sean? It's at year one. After that, you got to figure out other ways to motivate, but that's certainly something. But the biggest thing, Sean, is just the coaching. Mike, it's the coaching part of it. I want to bring up this question, Sean, because this is towards the bottom, but I do want to bring this up before we go to a super chat because I think this is a very interesting topic of conversation from one of the OGs that we have. Actually, haven't seen him in a while. Haven't seen old Grim in a while. Yeah, but good to see you, buddy.
With all the talent, doesn't matter who pulls the trigger at quarterback.
Yes and no. The no part is exactly what, Sean, you and I talked about the other day. We don't need to rehash it again. We had a long conversation about it, and that is, look, Notre Dame has the talent at quarterback now, where the expectation is they can beat anybody in the regular season with whoever they have a quarterback. And, whether it's Steve Angeli, who everybody knows, if I'm ranking them talent, I'm ranking Steve Angeli fourth on talent. But that's based on what standard? Winning a championship. Steve Angeli is still a good football player that brings attributes of the game that you like, that you can beat Texas A&M with, that you can beat Louisville with, that you can beat Florida State with, that you can beat USC on the road with, right? He does. And that's true of CJ and Kenny and Riley. And so the offense can be, and then because of the depth at running back, the depth at receiver, the talent at receiver, or, tight end and the offensive line, like, okay, I can adjust my offense to fit what we need to do with whoever starts a quarterback. That's where it's no, it doesn't matter. It does matter, however, if we're talking about reaching your ceiling as a program. So as far as the floor right now, this is the first time in a while, like 2022, Sean. I mean, Tim O'Malley and I were joking about this the other day via text and just talking about like the quarterback room and just I mean, you've been around these practices with you and I, Sean, where sometimes we don't got to say a word and we just said a whole bunch to each other because we saw, like, did you see what I just saw? Yep. And it was one of those things in 2022 is like, if Tyler Buckner is not your starting quarterback, your ceiling goes way down. What we said that year was, look, you can go 10-2 at Drew Pine, and Drew Pine led Notre Dame to an 8-2 record. That's exactly who he was. But our thought was, but there's only one kid in this room that has a chance to take you beyond that. And even he's like needs a lot of work still, where now you're just like, okay, like the bar, the floor is set so much higher. But I still say in 2024, the guy that has a chance to take this team to the highest level is Riley Leonard. And we'll talk more about him with some other questions, but like, look, you don't, I hear people pick his game apart and all these other kind of things, but like you just, a guy that can do the things he can do with his legs just changes the way teams defend you. And that's why I say, Sean, if Riley Leonard simply just gives us the 2022 version of himself, this offense is exponentially better than it was last year. because it forces teams to defend Notre Dame so much different. And he fits exactly what Mike Denbrock wants in a quarterback, and that's another part of it. So in that regard, yeah, it does matter who's pulling the trigger.
Thank you for the super chat. 2 mailbags in 1 week. Let's go. Sean Best, your fave restaurant on the north side of Chicago downtown. Any upcoming interviews on IB or all seasons can never be calm. Laughing out loud. I know we do have some really good recruiting interviews in the tank that I think everyone is going to enjoy. I definitely can say that. So you guys can look out for that leading into the blue and gold game on April the 20th. And then my favorite restaurant on the north side of Chicago, I would say it is a Mexican spot called Doña Nati. Their specialty is a ribeye taco, and it is absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Sean, can I ask you a Chicago food question?
Sure.
Because I've had people ask me this. They say, I like pizza, but I don't like what they call Chicago pizza because they've been convinced that it's deep dish pizza. You've said there's other types of really good Chicago pizza that's not that.
No one that lives in a neighborhood grows up ordering deep dish pizza delivered to their home. No one. That's tourists. Tourists come to Chicago to go to Giordano's, Lou Malnati's.
So what are some good pizza places in Chicago? Because I've had this asked and I've told, I don't know. I've never had pizza.
North Side Pequod's. Pequod's is world famous. I mean, they have the deep dish if you want it, but Pequod's are the best. Fox's in Beverly. Beverly is a wonderful South Side neighborhood, huge Irish, contingency and population. Fox's and Chuck's is another one in Beverly. Deep South Side Italian Fiesta is a long-standing South Side classic. And Joey's Pizza used to be on 113th and Halsted. That's what I grew up on. And it was fabulous thin crust pizza. So, and there are tons of pizzas all over the city, in different areas. I'm probably missing some that I think Jack's is like over by the Midway area, which is not as far south as I grew up. It's like 5,500 south by Midway Airport, but it's a little bit further west off Cicero is another one. So, oh yeah, and Pat's, that's a good call. Pat's in Lincoln Park is also fantastic. Yeah, but you can't go wrong. There's so many. That's why you would never see like Giordano's like in the inner city. They have one in Hyde Park, but Hyde Park is a very diverse area in Chicago. So yeah, those are the areas that you'll see places like a Lou Malnati's or Giordano's where it's going to be tourists, diversity, retail, things of that nature. If you go into the neighborhoods, you're not going to see a Giordano's. we don't rock with that in Chicago. Raymond Harden, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for all the content and hard work you guys have put in on the boards and in the shows. Guys and gals are missing out if you're not signed up. That's right. Go to boards.irishbreakdown.com right now. You're missing out if you're not signed up, like Raymond said. Homer Smith, thank you for the mailbag. Just saw that. Oh, I love this question. Absolutely. Just saw that Javon Boggs decommitted from Ohio State. How does his game compare to the other guys on the board? Is he a plan B if he's interested? Now, this is very interesting because, oh man, let's just say this, in speaking with Ryan and his intel and his conversations with Brady Hart, who is looking forward to coming to Notre Dame in April, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's going to be in campus in April. Yeah, I forget the exact day. Is it April the 6th? I know that's a big weekend. It's April 6th, right? Yeah, Brady Hart will be here April 6th. And we talked about Javon Boggs amongst ourselves and how much we liked him watching Brady Hart's film. And then Ryan had an opportunity to talk about, Javon, and Brady Hart raves about Javon Boggs, right? But he also raves about Notre Dame and how much he loves Notre Dame. So, you have Georgia getting the big commitment they got from Jared Curtis. So you remove him from the list of guys that Notre Dame likes at the 2026 quarterback position. And I see where people can start to connect the dots with Boggs decommitted from Ohio State, Brady Hart loving Notre Dame and how he's expressed his affection for Notre Dame through Ryan Roberts and the articles. And then you have the visit coming up in April. You know, could Notre Dame be in conversation? I mean, yeah, they like Javon Boggs' film. That's not something I'm sure they would hide from. And I'm sure it's something that they will possibly look into. But, you know, as Brian Driscoll always says, you have to get the young man on campus. Like, you know, that's going to be huge. If we hear a visit is in the making, then, you know, that's when we really start raising the antennas. Until then, you know, it's all speculation and, you know, connecting the dots based upon the relationship with
Yeah. And connect the dots as far as the interest, no doubt, but let's not connect the dots too far. You know, and I think a lot of people see that as like, well, because Notre Dame doesn't let guys who are committed somewhere else take officials, and that's not why he decommitted. He decommitted, and John Garcia had some on this as well, because he wanted to take visits. He wanted to open the process back up, and Ohio State also felt like, hey, if you're going to take all these visits, then, you know, like, so I think it was kind of both sides feeling like it was good to completely open this thing back up. So Notre Dame will be a player there. Is he a plan B? No, I don't think he's a plan B. I think they like him a lot. They like him. They like Derek Meadows. Obviously, I would argue maybe is their biggest must get in their eyes. They love Taylor, so they love Raiden Vines Bright, which we'll have a question about him coming up. And so there's a lot of those guys they really like. And I think receiver is going to be one of those positions, Sean, where I don't know that they'll necessarily stop recruiting guys once they get to 4. And I mean, because you look at the current roster and it's got really good depth, but, you know, Bo Collins is done after this year. I believe, you know, Jaden Harrison might have another year left, but I think he's done. I think this is his last year. I'm not 100% sure of that. You know, who knows if both Dion and Jaden Thomas come back next year. I don't know if that will happen. Maybe both come back. Maybe one comes back. Maybe both are gone. I mean, if Jaden Thomas has a, you know, big year this year, you know, maybe he's like, hey, it's my time, with especially the injuries he's had. Like, you know, dude, don't take that chance. So there's a lot of potential shakeup that could happen. And, you know, we'll kind of see how it plays out. But he's definitely part of the group they really like. Is he so he's not plan B. I do think he has interest, but I think his interest is more so in like, they're one of the schools that I will be considering moving forward. It's just not a Notre Dame becomes the school to beat now that he's decommitted. That's not the reality of the situation. But yes, Notre Dame does like him quite a bit.
How's Brennan Vernon looked? I love that he's reshaped his body and could be a force next year after Cross and Mills leaves. He flashed in that March 7 practice.
He's a good athlete for his size. Yeah. I mean, Brennan is still a pretty raw player. Still has a lot to learn, but there's definitely some talent there. There is. It's going to take him some time to get all the things out that they need. You know, a lot of that. So we'll kind of see how it plays out, but yeah, there's a lot of that.
And I think it goes to the mental reps and the progression from getting here, the shock of, yo, this is different, which a lot of college athletes go through. I don't care how good they are on the high school level. The transition is eye-opening for a lot of these guys. And then they're getting plugged into the program and learning what is expected of me. I know what I did in high school, but for this program, what do they expect of me here? And then they have to learn that and practice that and get better at that. And then once they do that, Marcus Freeman has talked about that in reference that there are some guys that have taken that next step from learning to now they've mastered it or they're close to mastering it, and now they can go out and perform at it and do it on a consistent basis and make a name for themselves in practices. So Brennan Vernon is on that path. And I think he's in that space of learning himself and getting better at what they're asking him to do. which is far different from what he was actually doing in
Yes.
high school.
And we'll kind of stay on those two guys because here's one from Bobby S. It's kind of similar, but also throws Devin Houston in there.
Yeah, do you think we're a year away from seeing Vernon and Houston on the field? Vernon's body looked great last year. Do you think he got too big now, changing positions? Is he really an interior guy?
Yeah, I believe that was kind of always the final goal, was for him to move inside. I don't think he got too big last year. He got too big as a senior in high school. That's when he got and I wouldn't even say, no, I wouldn't say he didn't get too big. He put too much bad weight on. There's a difference. And that's more of where I felt like he had some issues. And so what Notre Dame did is they said, let's get that weight off of you, and then we'll put that weight back on. So, no, I don't think he got too big. I do think he's ultimately a really quick penetrating inside three. I mean, he's very much going to follow the same path that Riley Mills did, except they're just not going to waste as much time with him outside as they did with Riley. And so Riley was a more natural outside player too. I don't wasting time is probably a bad example. He needed to play there a couple years ago. They needed him there, but Brennan was more of like because of how much depth they have at the other positions and the potential of other players, it was easier to move him inside. Devin Houston and Brendan Vernon, I still think, are both, as of where they are right now, both still works in progress. They're still well behind the other guys, but you can see the talent and the potential flash when we see him in practice, Sean.
And that's amazing because I think you could possibly see them. Well, I think you're going to see them because I expect Notre Dame to blow a lot of teams out this year with the schedule they have.
I mean, did it last year, so
yeah, I expect to see both of those kids possibly late in third quarters and in fourth quarters because they used up last year, so now you can just let them rock and roll. But also, it's amazing how, let's just take Charles Jagusah for a second, right? He was in that process of learning and doing what he was being asked to do for Notre Dame, which was to play inside. All of a sudden, opportunity comes up. He gets the opportunity to play outside of the tackle. And what do you know? His talent takes over. And that's the way it is. These young men, they're going through the process of being asked to do certain things. And you talked about the way they broke Brendan Vernon's body down and then tried to build him back up. That's something within itself. They went through a learning process, I would think, with Tyson Ford, right? They asked him to do something, and then they're like, okay, let's make an adjustment. And everyone's path is different. But both of these young men, I feel like Devin Houston made some plays when he got into games last year. And I was like, whoa, okay. I think we're just looking for these guys to develop first, their bodies get stronger, because playing in positions that they're expected to play, they're going to be expected to make an impact, be strong, and change the narrative per se on that defensive line, right? Because one of the things we've been looking for going into the third year, especially on the defensive line, is, hey, can we shut down the running game a little bit more?
And more playmakers.
More playmakers,
right.
Yeah.
Which those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah.
With the way Notre Dame plays defense, right?
Mm-hmm. Thoughts on RVB, Finney, and Boggs? Rating Bonds, right? Finney and Boggs. How would you stack them up? And then a hypothetical, if we landed Meadows, would we take a fifth if it was one of them? And if we landed one of them, take Meadows.
I can say with great confidence that if somebody else wanted to commit that they would take now, that they would definitely still want Derek Meadows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know as much, Sean, if it was the other way around. I don't know as much about – I think – I'm giving you what I think, reading tea leaves, that they would still take a fifth if it's those guys plus Taylor on the board. I still think they'd take five. That one I think is true, but I don't want to say for sure. The other way, if one of those guys or Taylor wanted to come in now, would they still take Derek Meadows? That one I'm very confident would be true, because he's such a different type of player than those guys, and they want that skill set in this class. They really, really want that skill set in this class, and they're going to work hard to they're going to try to work hard to get to it. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, I definitely. If it's a combination of Derek Meadows and Taylor, yeah, absolutely going to 5. Heck yeah.
Well, I'd say the same thing about Raiden Vines Bright. I got to watch Brandon Finney a little bit more. I haven't seen him as much as the other guys, but yeah, Raiden Vines Bright and Taylor and Derek Meadows, any combination of those three, any two of those three that want to come, I'm taking them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for Notre Dame, they may take one of the other two, and then Meadows is more of that what they may be looking for, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Wait, Garrett, thank you for the mailbag. Do you guys know if Notre Dame is still doing the shirt this year? Yeah, they said that the announcement's going to be on the 17th. I think they released that information today.
Right before the spring game.
Yeah, I think the announcement is coming. No, the 16th. It was April the 16th. The announcement is coming.
Yeah, they always do that like some days before the spring game.
Mm-hmm.
So, which means the Driscolls always have to make a trip over to campus to get the shirt
because
my wife loves doing that stuff. Loves it. Yeah, she can't wait to get over there and get them. And she gets like the girl version and then the boy version. What I mean, like they have one that are designed for women.
Right?
They have like the V-neck and just like the fit and the style. And then they have the ones that are more traditional. You can say boy shirts or unisex or whatever, but yeah, she loves getting all that stuff, man. So I got to smile. Yeah, sure, honey. Let's go to campus and get the shirt that I'm never going to wear. But sure, that sounds great, But yeah. But anyway, yeah, so we'll be doing that.
How many quarterbacks on the roster do you think will get meaningful playing time in games this year or this season?
Good question, Stone Adore. I would hope that only one. I mean, as far as meaningful snaps, I would hope only one because that means there's good health, but this is college football, and the odds are usually pretty good that second guy at some point in time is going to have to get some meaningful snaps. I mean, even last year with Jaden Daniels, go watch the Bama game. It was still a close competitive game when Jaden Daniels got knocked out and had to bring in Nussmeier. So usually you're going to have to play 2. I hope that it's not more than 2. And again, when I say meaningful snaps, I don't mean volume. I'm hoping from a volume standpoint, all 4 of those kids can play to a degree. Mm-hmm. Although if CJ's not your number 2, I would not play him more than 4 games and save that red shirt for him. But I mean, I would like to see all 4 of those guys get a chance to play this year at some point in time if they're all there. But I hope it's not more than so volume. When I think meaningful, Sean, I mean like some sort of leverage situation in the game. Not coming off the bench when you're up 35 or things like that. So I would hope it's not more than 2.
I think it will be 2, and it could possibly get to 3 due to injury. I fully expect that the confidence that they have in the quarterback room would lend itself to Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman being very big picture minded, especially when it comes to Riley Leonard. All right, knowing the process that he's going through and recovering from injury, I don't think they take any chances in a regular season game saying, you know what, Steve is playing this week. And will have full confidence that they can go out and rock out and win their game with Steve Angeli. That is the blessing in disguise for everything that Notre Dame is going through. That the coaching staff will go into the regular season with confidence to be able to rightly divide certain things that might come up from an injury standpoint to say, you know what, we're not pressed. We still can go win this game. So we don't even have to think about it. We don't have to debate it. We need him. We need Riley Leonard healthy, totally healthy for the playoffs. Big picture. That's what we're thinking. We're thinking playoffs, national championship. And because we're thinking that way, we have full confidence that Steve and or Kenny can get the job done this week or the next couple of weeks, however long it takes. And that's a really good feeling to have as a coaching staff and as a head coach. Because I can't think of many quarterback head coaches that have that confidence in the quarterback room going into this season.
What'd you say about handful? It's a small
3 or 4.
Guys. Yeah,
3 or 4 guys.
Probably a little bit more than that. As far as multiple quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you got like transfers. Like I think Georgia would probably feel confident. If they had to go to a couple of their young guys, they got some young guys they like.
I think DeBoer would feel confident.
DeBoer would feel confident. You got Milroy, you got Ty Simpson, you've got the kid that they love, Dylan Lonergan. Plus, you got Austin Mack to transfer from Washington.
Right.
So
USC would feel confident.
Ohio State with Devin Brown as your number 2. You've got Aaron Nolan coming in. Oregon, obviously, with Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore. You've got USC with Miller Moss and the kid that transferred from UNLV. But the list is kind of short, though, Sean. I mean, if we're being honest about it. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that will give lip service. Texas, that's another one with Arch behind Quinn Ewers. That's another one. Yep. And they got a kid. They got an under the radar kid this year as a true freshman. He won't be ready to play as a freshman. But he's got some ability.
Yeah.
Every coach is going to tell you publicly that, we feel really good. We can win with all these guys. But like guys that honestly believe that they can win. But I think there's a reason Notre Dame went out and got Riley Leonard, and it's not for competition. It's because they think he can take them to heights that the other kids just aren't ready to take them to just yet. And so that's something that we have to be willing to acknowledge. Real quick from USMA 87 said that the announcement for the shirt is actually April 19th. So it's the day before. So that is there. So thank you for that. Coleman Smith with a question. He says, when it comes to the guards, would it be smart to flip Billy and Coogan? The left side of the line is generally the more laterally athletic side. Am I overthinking it? I don't know that I would say the left side of the line is normally your more laterally athletic side. I think you can tend to have – I've always felt I kind of like my sides to be similar unless I have a certain type of run game. I tend to agree with you that I would probably flip it. But the counter argument that I would make to you, Coleman, is – but Charles is young. He's going to be a redshirt freshman next year. Coogan's your most experienced guy. There's merit to saying, hey, I want to have my most experienced guy next to Charles Jagasaw. Make sure that we get Charles Jagasaw kind of going, because on the other side, you've got Tosh. Now, Tosh, who knows how good Tosh is going to be this year. I hope he's good, but Tosh is a 5th-year senior. Tosh knows what he's doing. And so there's merit to that. I personally would go the route you're talking about, Coleman. That's what I personally would do. But and part of me wonders if Billy's like clearly that guy this spring, but there's still other guys battling. I think that would be something that can maybe expedite the move to left guard, and then maybe have Coogan and Rocco battle it out at right guard. I could see something like that if Billy has a really good spring. But that's really going to come down to Billy. I mean, Billy's got to force that issue on him. Like, hey, look, I know you don't want to have 2 young guys side by side, but you also need to have that great dominant side. And right now, that dominant side could be the left side with, Charles Jagasaw and Billy Schrouth and Ashton Craig all kind of playing boom, boom, boom. But you're not going to do that just because you think stylistically this may Pat Coogan is your left guard. And until somebody gives you a reason for him not to be your left guard, the way that O-line coaches often think, that's normally how they're going to be. I tend to agree with you, Coleman Smith. I'm just giving you some devil's advocate type of the things for that. But so no, I don't think you're overthinking it. I think there's got to be more to it than just this guy's better laterally athletic. There's got to be more to it than that. When you have a guy that's established. Be maybe a different story if maybe they were both new starters. They both started last year. You may want to think about it. But in this particular case, that's kind of how I see it. So good question, man. Really good question.
Is the coaching staff concerned BMO won't be ready for the start of fall camp or game 1? If so, what changes do they make?
Well, let's just, from my understanding, is they think he's going to be ready for fall camp. That's what I've been told. We'll see how that plays out. But if they were concerned about him being ready to go in the season, then you'd start seeing Christian Gray play a lot more. And we had another question, Sean, that somebody asked, and I'll try to find it so we can kind of discuss it while we're talking about it here. But the premise of the question was essentially with them not moving Christian Gray over. It might have been on the message board. Actually, now that I think about it, was on the mailbag on the message board. But the conversation was with Christian not moving over.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make you think they're more confident in that Benjamin's going to be back? And I'd say not for practice 1. Let's see if it's the case in practice 12. Because in practice 1, they may not want to shake it up too much.
Well, the situation for me, the surgery he had is a 6-week recovery. So what we're really talking about is this young man being ready to go physically and healthy, building back to where he wants to be from May through for the 2 months, May and June. He'll be ready to get ready for fall camp. And from that standpoint, it's just about him maintaining his health throughout the season. But once again, this rock 2 years ago, even a year ago, something like this and news like this breaking is far more devastating to hear.
Yeah.
Than it really is. It's like you don't want anybody to be injured.
Yeah.
You don't want anyone to be injured. Now it's a concern that you'll have during the season. I hope he can stay healthy. But as far as the roster being built to a point to be able to sustain injuries like this, and he's one of the guys you definitely would not want to lose at any point during the season.
Yeah.
Right. But does Notre Dame feel like, we can go out with Jaden Mickey, Clarence Lewis, and my guy Christian Gray on a Saturday and win a game?
And they're going to get Leonard Moore.
Absolutely.
They could always move Micah Bell back outside.
But I got Carson Hobbs in here. Look.
But Sean, it goes back to the quarterback conversation, though, right, man? I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is the point that I want to make. It's like it's the floor versus the ceiling. No, Notre Dame's already proven they get the college football playoff without Benjamin Morrison or even a great cornerback room. I don't know that you can do that necessarily in Al Golden's defense because it's a little bit more, man-oriented. But the point is, but that's not the standard anymore. The standard is now, can you go out and compete for a championship? And my question is, could they in 2024 have a compete for a championship because of the cornerbacks without Benjamin Morrison? I don't think that they can. Would they still be pretty good there? Yeah. I mean, with Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey as the starters and Clarence Lewis as your swing guy, they can still be pretty good. But you have a chance to have one of the best cornerback rooms in all of college football. It's kind of like, and that's not a knock on Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey. It's like those two guys would be pretty good, but wouldn't you be even better if you had those two plus Benjamin Morrison? So to Sean's point, Benjamin being out this spring doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me one bit. It bothers me even less than not having Riley Leonard because Benjamin is a dude. And there's some, gets, these other guys some more work. But if he's not 100% by the time we get to the fall, then I get a little bit more concerned. And there's a question. This is the one. Bubs is the one that asked the question about earlier. But then there's a question from Jason Rose. How do you think his injury will affect his ability to get back to being a reliable and dependable tackler in the run game? I mean, those are all fair questions, and we don't have the answers to those right now. But those are the things that I'm more concerned about. How will he play when he gets back, more so than whether he will get back?
For me, until I hear information that deems the injury to be worth worrying about, I'll let that happen. We'll cross that bridge when we need to. Do you guys think Mater Dei could actually be a pipeline for Notre Dame? IMG haven't converted yet.
I don't think so. I mean, look, how far is that to Los Angeles? Isn't that right outside of Los Angeles? Isn't Santa Ana
hour 15
right outside of it?
Hour 15. So, yeah.
I mean, it's always going to be a USC school.
Yeah.
And do I think Notre Dame can do a better job of getting more kids from Mater Dei? Maybe. I mean, when's the last kid they got from Mater Dei? Wasn't it Brad Williams back in the 2000s or something like that, 90s or something like that? But I mean, it's never been a school they've had great. And De La Salle's been good to them in the past. I mean, they got Aaron Taylor from De La Salle. They got Derek Landry from De La Salle. They got Isaiah Foskey from De La Salle. They got Cooper Flanagan from De La Salle. So they've had more success at De La Salle than they have Mater Dei. Mater Dei has always been for whatever reason, more of a USC pipeline than the other. So I don't see that changing. I think the only thing that could change is Notre Dame needs to learn they got to get some wins at Mater Dei. at some point in time, right? Like you'd think they'd have to get some wins. But as far as it becoming a feeder school, no, I don't see it. Same with IMG. Can they get kids from IMG? Sure, they get kids from IMG. Is it ever going to become a pipeline for Notre Dame? No, it's not. There will be years where I could see them getting multiple guys, but it won't become a consistent. There will also be years they get nobody. I mean, Sean, there's a chance that this year they could get 3 guys at IMG. I mean, I'm not betting my mortgage on it, but there's a chance they could get Owusu Boateng, Gavin Nix, and Raiden Vines Bright. I could see that, right? I could certainly see him get at least one of those guys. But we'll kind of see if they can do that consistently, because we've seen them do that before. Remember the year they got a couple of years in a row, they got Spencer Perry, Tony Jones, Houston Griffith, in Robert Hainsey, 4 and 2 years, 17 and 18. And then they went several years without anyone. So it'll be more like that with those schools. That's kind of more of how it'll be at that point. So good question.
We all talk about a true quarterback competition, but do you think there's a true O-line competition?
I hope so. I mean, I don't have any reason to believe that there isn't. I mean, look, do I think that if another younger lineman or Rocco Spindler was way better than Pat Coogan, that they would play that guy? Yeah. My concern is, but is that a real competition? If a guy has to be significantly better, then is that a real competition? I don't know that it is, because here's my thing: if Rocco and Coogan go head to head this spring, and Rocco's just slightly better, shouldn't he start? I mean, you can't use the lack of what's the lack of experience? 3 games. He's got 3 less games than Coogan, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to matter. So I think certain positions. I mean, I do think that they would love for Emil Wagner to really battle at that right tackle spot. Is there a true competition at center? Not really. Is there? But that's understandable. Is there a true competition left tackle? No, not really. So at certain spots, I think there's more of an open competition than others. I think right tackle, certainly an open competition. The second guard spot, I'm less optimistic that there's a real competition. The center left tackle, no, there's not real. It would have to, regression would be required from someone. And that's okay. I don't need real competition. I don't need real competition in nose tackle and D tackle. As long as my veterans keep doing what they're there should always be competition. Guys, do you really think there's anybody on the roster that's going to beat out Xavier Watts at safety? That could even beat out if they even gave him? No. You could say it's real competition in that if this guy played better, they might play him more, but it's just not going to happen. So that's just never true everywhere. You just need to make sure that it's true enough to where when it should happen, whether it's a guy that didn't play well the year before, which is true of the guards, both guards, and it's also true of certain spots where it's hey, that guy wasn't good enough to say that's our dude. He's got to earn it again. And that's kind of where I get a little bit concerned when we don't see enough of that. Yeah.
Do you think Steve Angeli, Notre Dame, could have a season like J.J. McCarthy in Michigan last season if Steve would be the starter, a clutch, gutsy quarterback with talent around him and a potential top 10 defense? I think J.J. McCarthy is a little bit more physically talented than Steve Angeli.
Yeah, Chembo, I agree with Sean there on that one. I mean, look, I have my issues with J.J. McCarthy as far as how good is he? Has he ever been actually asked to carry a team? No. But JJ's a very physically gifted kid. Mm-hmm. And I actually think I wish he would have been able to play another year of college football. I think of all the quarterbacks in the draft that could have come back, he needed it more than any others. And I understand why he came out. It's his head coach is leaving. There's a lot of uncertainty around him. He's losing his top weapons. I get all the reasons he left. I just think JJ could have been a number 1 pick next year if he would have come back and really developed and taken that next jump, because he would have had to carry the team more next year. He might have made more mistakes and done those type of things, but I think he would have been better for it because his game needs a lot of work. But I don't think that JJ is JJ was exactly what you said, but when JJ needed to make plays, JJ showed playmaking ability that Steve doesn't have, especially with his legs, and that Kenny doesn't have and CJ doesn't have, if we're being honest, because JJ's a really good athlete, like a really good runner. Like if JJ McCarthy played in Notre Dame's offense with Mike Denbrock, he'd run for a lot more yards than he did, in my opinion, at Michigan. Just because that's just not what Michigan does. It's not a knock on the coaching staff at Michigan. It's just not what they do. 202 yards and 3 touchdowns is it is what it is. But I mean, in an offense, like, let's say he was playing it for Denbrock at LSU. Let's say JJ McCarthy was at LSU instead of Jaden Daniels. His numbers would have looked a whole lot different, but he also would have shown himself that you need one more year, in my opinion, which is fine, but he could be more of a playmaker. That's my issue with JJ McCarthy. He hasn't been asked to do a lot of things he's going to need to be asked if he's a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Right? I mean, the Minnesota Vikings aren't drafting him at number 5 to sit him for a couple of years. But I think that's kind of what he needs, at least a year, because he didn't do enough in college, where as far as the need to carry. I mean, Caleb Williams for 2 years had to put a team on his shoulders and carry it. Like, Drake Mays had to do that for 2 years. Jaden Daniels, to a degree, did that this year. He didn't have to carry the team the way that those other 2 guys did, but he still did. You know what I mean? Because he had great weapons around him, but that guy was a big-time playmaker. I think JJ could have really benefited from that. And because, like, here's the thing. You could put any quarterback on their roster at quarterback against Penn State and win that game. You can't say the same for Washington against Oregon. You can't say take Michael Penix out and put in anybody else at Washington, they still win, or take Bo Nix out and they still go toe-to-toe with Washington. That's not true, because they required their quarterbacks to do so much more than Michigan required their quarterback to do. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, as you said, Sean, JJ's a much more physically gifted player than Steve was. Like, if you're going to compare Steve to a former Michigan quarterback, it'd be more of, he's a more talented version of what Cade McNamara was in 2021. That would be a more fair of, he's a slightly better version of that.
Well, what was the other kid, Harbaugh's first year? Wilton Spates?
When
they almost beat Ohio State?
Yeah,
Wilton Spates. Yeah. Those are the type of quarterbacks.
Like Jake Rudock in 15, the kid from Iowa. And he's by far the most talented quarterback Michigan has had under Harbaugh.
Oh, absolutely.
Certainly is.
T. Smith 0323, thank you for the mailbag. I know Ryan does the NFL side, but Sean has a great mind on it too. How would you feel about the Vikings trading up to number 4, getting JJ and Marv going to the Jets at 5? Marv going to the Jets at 5 would be a waste to me, with Mike Williams coming in. They already have their number 1 receiver. I'm not sure the Harrisons would actually like that. A lot of people have Marvin Harrison pegged. Actually, I saw recently that they have Marvin Harrison dropping all the way to the Bears at 9.
Wow.
Malik Neighbors ran a 4.35 at his pro day today. Rome Odunze is coming up very soon. If Rome runs a 4.4, he could be in the running. So, and Marv chose not to work out at the Ohio State pro day. So if that bangs him a little bit, look,
I kind of hope it does, to be completely honest.
And if he falls to 9 and the Bears pick him up, by all means, bang away NFL.
I kind of hope it does happen. Also. Yeah, I kind of hope it does happen, Sean, because look, yes, your film was very good, but your film wasn't necessarily better than some of these other guys in this draft class.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the way in which Caleb Williams is asked that, are you afraid to compete? Like, okay, that's just silly. Right? But Caleb didn't do the combine because he was going to do the pro day. Mm-hmm. Malik Neighbors didn't do the combine because he's going to do the pro day. What was the reason for Marvin Harrison not to do anything? Right? Because he can, is essentially. So I would like to see them say, no, you can't, because you're not that much better. Here's the interesting. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a very, very good wide receiver. I will say this. Is he the best receiver in this draft class right now, today? Yeah, I'd say yes. But here's my thing about Malik Neighbors. And as Sean, as you know, I've studied a lot of LSU film the last month as I'm breaking down these things for the shows. Malik Neighbors, to me, is the guy that has the highest ceiling amongst the top guys because he still is not a very refined player. You watch them play, Sean. None of those guys are very good route runners at LSU. None of them were. They are just that physically gifted that they would just smoke guys. And you're just like, imagine if he would have run a good route there. You know what I mean? Like that 30-yard catch turns into a touchdown. So if you got if you're a team that's got a receivers coach that you can just teach that kid his craft, and there's like a veteran receiver to play with him, I could see Malik Neighbors being the best of this group because he still has a way more room to go. To me, Marvin Harrison Jr. just kind of is what he is. That's excellent. That's very, very good, but he's already kind of NFL ready. Roma Dunze is kind of NFL ready. Malik Neighbors is NFL ready because he's so physically good, but his game is not necessarily NFL ready. And that may seem like an insult, but I don't view it. I view it as this guy's got a lot of room to go from here to here is my point. And so I would consider, if I was an NFL team, I would consider that depending on what my system was and if I need a 6'4" vertical receiver, then it's no brainer. That's the other part of it too. But if I need more of a explosive guy that can be a movement piece, I'm a team that likes to move my receivers around. Like, let's just say this. Let's say the Kansas City Chiefs traded up to number 5. I would say they have a greater need for a Malik Neighbors type of guy than they do for a Marvin Harrison Jr. type of guy, right? That movement, the way that their offense is, they want that movement piece that they can move all over in matchups. And I don't know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is that.
I would have agreed with that before they got Marquise Brown. So I would be, and they got rid of
Brown.
Yeah.
See, I don't view him as the same kind of player.
So
I think he's a niche guy. I think Malik Neighbors is an every down guy.
But see,
they like to move their receivers around.
They like to move their receivers, and they prefer bigger receivers on the outside, like a Scanling and some of the other
on the outside
they have.
Right.
So my thing is with Kelsey, and that he's not Tyreek Hill, but they want him to play Tyreek Hill in the offense, the speed guy that opens things up. So I would think they would like, based upon what they do, they would go with a bigger body receiver.
Yeah, see, I think they'd go with a smaller guy. I do, because I think, we don't know because they're not going to trade up to number 5, but I just kind of feel like that would be the guy that would be.
And for me, the Vikings would be, and this is not me saying who's better. The Vikings with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson are ready to roll now. They don't need a quarterback that needs a year to sit.
Right.
Jaden Daniels is more prepared, in my opinion, to come in and play now with Kevin O'Connell. Is he going to be better in the long run than J.J. McCarthy? That's up to those two gentlemen.
Did I miss something about the Jets trading up to 5?
No, that was in the question. So I assume that's a possibility.
Did that happen today or something?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
If that's happened or it's been rumored or something like that. But the Chargers are rumored to be trading back though.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that. You and I talked about the other day. And I think his point would be then, okay, so then the Cardinals, who don't need a quarterback, would then trade back and get those two picks, so that whoever could leap number 5 in the charge, because the Chargers, I would assume, Marvin going to the Jets at 5. I mean, Mike Williams has been banged up a lot. If I could see why you would want to take Marvin Harrison. If you think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the clear number 1 receiver in this draft class, then I think you got to take the number 1 receiver.
Go ahead.
Point. If you see it as like these guys are both elite receivers and you feel that one guy complements your other pieces more, then that's when you kind of get into it where it's more about the fit necessarily than. But it just depends on how you value one guy over there. If you think one guy's clear-cut number 1, then you make it work, because Mike Williams is old enough, and where his contract situation plus his injury history, to where I'm not passing on who I believe to be the best receiver in the draft class, if that's what the Jets thought, because of him. That would be my only thing. And there's nothing that says I can't have them on opposite sides, because I think Marvin's versatile enough to where Marvin can move around field and boundary and some different things there. But that would be with the Jets, I don't know enough about the Jets. Is receiver really the position where they have the greatest need right now? I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Receiver would be the dumbest move in the world. your biggest asset, your most important asset is coming off a torn Achilles. If you don't get protection for Aaron Rodgers,
You're saying like the Jets traded up to 5 and they don't take Joe Alt.
The kid from Penn State, like what are we doing?
Yeah, you can stay 5, but yeah,
with this wide receiver, you can get a third wide receiver and where you're at. Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? Like, if you're going to make that move and give up assets to move up, I'm not moving up to go get a receiver.
No. If one falls to me, like you said, like if you said somebody had Marvin Harrison Jr. falling to 9, if you're the Bears and he's there, you may look at your roster and say, well, we just got Keenan Allen and we just got him, but guys,
right,
we can't pass on this kid. You know what I mean? Like we cannot pass on this kid. DJ Moore's getting a little bit older. Keenan Allen's on the downside of his career. Yeah, it's not a need, but man, we got to do this because we can address D tackle later. You know what I mean? Or we may feel good enough about the O-line now with Caleb's mobility. Who knows? But sometimes it's like, yeah, this wasn't a need of ours, but this kid's just too good not to pass up.
And that's position-wise, you're right. Position-wise, I would elevate tight end in New York over wide receiver. Because they don't have an impactful tight end. I would give Aaron Rodgers an impactful tight end before I go out and get a third wide receiver.
Yeah. Where do the Jets pick? What's their spot in this draft? See here. They're at 10. I mean, to your point, I'd sit at 10 and see if Brock Bowers falls.
Brock Bowers drops.
Brock Bowers isn't there, then take a tackle. I'd still, even at 10 though, I'd still consider a tackle over.
Because you could take the kid from Oregon State.
It's like with Aaron Rodgers, like Aaron Rodgers is an elevator. That's the whole point. I always thought he's an elevator. He doesn't necessarily need a number 10 overall draft pick pass catcher. Go get a good player in round 2 and get some. You got Mike Williams, but if the guy's laying on his back all the time or getting pressured all the time, then that's a different deal. And apparently the Mekhi Becton one didn't pan out. Looks like, but
and they've made a couple of moves. I think they got Tyron Smith.
Yeah, from the Cowboys.
Yeah, but he's off injured as well. So, Ivan Benami, thank you for the super chat, mailbag. It's wild to be seen on the board how many people don't think Riley is that good or Steve Angeli is as good or better. Crazy talk.
Well, like here's my thing about it, Sean. It's not so much a Riley Leonard issue. It's a how we debate sports now issue. And it's like my issue with the conversation on the board, and you get some of these people, they're like, well, if you don't say Riley Leonard's the greatest thing ever, and like, no, that's childish. The problem is more so that you refuse to give him any credit, and so people are forced to then constantly defend him because all you want to do is say, well, he's not accurate, he's not accurate, he's not accurate. Even if I accept your premise, dude, put on the tape. Never beat a top. This is my favorite. Never beat a top team at Duke. Think about what you just said. He never beat a top team at Duke. Like, guys, he played on a team that won 10 games the 3 years before he took over as a starter, and they won 9 his first year. He had them on the verge of beating Notre Dame. He gave them a lead in the fourth quarter against Notre Dame. And if it wasn't for a 4th and 17 scramble, they have a win over Notre Dame. Like, he's at Duke. He doesn't have the Notre Dame talent around him to go beat those teams. So that's just a lame argument. But the thing about it is we could have an honest discussion about Riley Leonard's flaws and his strengths, but the problem is no one's willing to do those things anymore. It's either he's going to win the Heisman or he sucks, and I don't know why we went to the portal for another quarterback. It's like with everything we talk about now, Sean, let's have an honest and fair conversation. These are the things about him that I like and why he's a dynamic playmaker and why he gives him the high ceiling. But as I said the other day, there's some parts of his game that I'd like to see better. But if you can't watch his film and say, this kid, with just what he's already done, would make this team so much better, then your issue actually isn't with Riley Leonard. You've got something else going on there. You're anti-portal. You're a Jersey guy that always roots for Jersey. I don't know what it is, but I just think you're missing the boat. Or here's the other mistake people make. I think he's not a great player. Why? Well, I saw him play. What game did you see him play? Well, I saw him play against Notre Dame. Well, if you weren't impressed with what he did against Notre Dame, I don't know what to tell you. It's the best pass defense in college football last year. But it's like, so if you only saw Deshaun Watson against Notre Dame in 2015, what would your thoughts of Deshaun Watson been? Because he was like 9 of 21 for like 90 yards passing, right? Like if you only saw a guy once, you know, you may not have a very high opinion of him. So you break down, I've watched every game that Riley Leonard's played in. That kid's a really good football player that fits this defense well. But I also think there's parts of his game that need to get better. We should be able to have that conversation. The problem is it's like with anything, Sean. It's like people that love Steve Angeli, they refuse to hear the concerns about Steve Angeli. No, he's a grit, he's a winner. Okay, so we just can't have a conversation about why I don't think he's a winner? You know what I mean? Well, no, he's a winner. You're a hater. Oh, okay. We're in that space now. Great. You know, or Riley Leonard's not accurate. He can't play at this level. He can't do this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, that's it. That's like, so we're just in that space. You're not willing to hear anything else about him. No. And it's like that in politics, Sean. It's like that with culture. It's like that with sports. There's just so much of this. It's either this or this. Mm-hmm. And there's no, it's kind of here, and think about what we're just talking about. Either people say Joe Alt's the best left tackle to come across in 20 years, or they do nothing but pick his game apart. And there's not enough people that say, here's what I love about him. Here's parts of his game need to get better. And then let's roll with it. And I can still say he's the best tackle in the draft class. But no, now it's I have to pick things apart and do something that's going to get me a lot of clicks. So I'm going to say something outlandish and stupid, like he's not this or he's not that. And Marvin Harrison's not really that good. Okay, what are we doing here? Right. So, yes, can you pick apart Marvin Harrison Jr.'s game? Yeah. Could you argue that Malik Neighbors is a better draft prospect than Marvin Harrison Jr.? Absolutely. But the conversation isn't about that. It's he's overrated. He's not this. He's that. Caleb Williams is the same way. Jaden Daniels is the same way. It's like, J.J. McCarthy's the same way. We can't have real talk anymore. It just comes down to he's either the greatest thing ever and I don't want to hear anything. And if you say something negative about him, you're a hater.
Facts.
Well, no, I think he's a really good player, but he needs to do better at this. And I'm not a child, so I don't hate on people just because I don't think they're as good as I do as football players. So that's the problem with it. But I can understand. Look, I can understand people having some concerns about Riley Leonard. I think there's fair to have concerns because is what Riley Leonard did in 2022 is good enough for Notre Dame to run the table next year. It's good enough for Notre Dame to win a playoff game or two. Is it good enough to beat Georgia? I think is it good enough to go out there and in the playoff, let's say you win round 1 and you got to play Georgia in round 2 and Ohio State in round 3 and maybe Texas or Bama or something like that in the championship game. Is his consistency good enough for him to play well enough week after week after week at that level? Mm-hmm. That's a fair question. That's a very fair question. Is when he's on his game, can he beat anybody in the country? Darn right. Is he consistent enough to do it in 4 consecutive postseason games? Fair question. Fair question. But people who will not have that debate are also going to try to tell me that a kid that hasn't thrown for 3,000 yards in his life is that guy. And that's the problem I have. Or people that just completely dismiss Steve and give Steve no credit for how well he played in the bowl game. That's the other side of that one. And that's the unfortunate thing, Sean, is like it's like the Logan Aldrich thing. I'm glad Logan Diggs is gone. What? Well, I want Aldrich. Okay, you can want Aldrich to be the guy and still think Logan Diggs is a pretty good football player or vice versa. And it just, we've come into that, right? We've turned into like this just really just shallow. And this is what I love about our community. I feel like our community has a lot more of the good debating. We'll see it in the chat all the time, but even it still even has that element of it's either this or this. And people say, why don't you talk politics? Number one, because I'm a shut up and dribble guy. So if I want the professional athletes to shut up about politics and just talk about sports, then I'm going to do the same thing. But the other thing is I know that there's people who are just flat out would stop listening to me right now if I told them who I voted for and this thing or that thing or the other thing. And the same thing would be true for you. I can't listen to Sean anymore. Why? He voted for so-and-so. What does that have to do with his take on the Bears? You know what I mean? It's just, it's all so crazy. And we see it bleed over into all these other things, in my opinion, and it gets frustrating.
Look, this situation has been, I've tried to be Switzerland in this thing because I tried to tell, even when they got Riley Leonard, I tried to tell Notre Dame fans, look, please, let's not do to him what we did to Sam Hartman. We put everything from a success standpoint on Sam Hartman's shoulders. Riley Leonard will be a piece, a very valuable piece to Notre Dame in their success in 2024. He's a piece. I don't want Riley Leonard to put on the cape he had to put on at Duke each and every week. Did we see him do it? Yes. Do I want him to do that in Notre Dame? No. No. Because if he has to do that in Notre Dame, that's a bigger conversation we need to have. If he needs to do that. Can he be a piece of a national championship run? Yes. But you know what else I believe? That there are other quarterbacks in the Notre Dame quarterback room that can get Notre Dame to the college football playoff. Regardless of what you think about their physical
four.
talent.
I would argue
Yes.
there's four.
Yes.
Right.
Regardless of what you think about their physical talent. And I don't think anybody's sitting here saying, I haven't seen anybody say Steve Angeli is more physically talented than Riley Leonard.
Oh, I have.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I have on the message board.
Now,
Yeah,
that's a conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to go make sure you're taking the right medication if you're on. I'm worried about that. You need to ask your doctor for another prescription. You know,
Sean, this is my favorite response to my whole thing about who I voted for. This is great. This is from Sloppy Joe. He said BD voted for Kanye. Guarantee it.
Hey,
no, I didn't.
Hey, I'm just saying, a year ago, Kanye told you about Sean Combs a year ago.
Yes, he did. A lot of people were telling people about him. Yeah,
you know,
a lot of people were trying to sound that warning bell.
But I digress and get back to the original conversation. Look, people, man, I warn people. As a Chicago Bears fan, I just watched a city basically burn its sports community down over a silly debate out of a win-win situation. This is a win-win situation. We just said Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman has a confidence in his quarterbacks that only a few coaches can have. True confidence in the nation.
Yeah.
And now the Riley Leonard injury gives the two young studs even more opportunity to get better and come out of this spring further ahead than we might have anticipated.
Yeah.
Look, this is a win-win situation for Notre Dame that we're experiencing, even though it comes at the expense of a young man being injured and probably being extremely frustrated with the process of trying to get back on the field, going back to his original injury.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the one thing I would slightly disagree with, Sean, is I don't think it's a win-win in that if your goal is the playoff. I do think they can make a wrong decision if it comes down to Riley's not available. Who are we going to take the shot with to try to make as deep of a run as we can this year?
That's like a branch off of it.
Right. But to your point, at the base level, whichever decision you go with, this team is going to get you here. They're going to get you here, and that's a good place to be.
Yeah. It is written. I like that. Nice Nas album. Thank you for the super chat. What should be our expectations of the secondary this year, considering the BMO news?
Well, the BMO news is he'll be back in the fall. I mean, Benjamin Morrison's expected to be back in the fall. So I'll look at it this way. If Benjamin Morrison is back and healthy, which the expectation he is, they have the expectation that they should be one of the 3 or 4 best secondaries in all of college football next year. If he's not back and he can't play next year, I still think this is a top 10 secondary. I mean, Notre Dame could lose Benjamin Morrison hypothetically and still have an All-American. Well, not hypothetically. They would still have an All-American coming back and still have 2 really talented corners to play with, which was the point you were making earlier, right? So the expectation should still be a top 10 cornerback room. What can they be an elite top 2 to 3 cornerback room without him? Not this year. I don't think this year, but they should still be very good, even without him. Like top 10. I mean, like I was watching the Cincinnati game 2 years ago. And I'm just like, I don't want to name names because I don't want to put guys on blast, but I'm thinking, God, this is a very unathletic secondary. It was like Cam Hart and a bunch of what the F is going on here stuff in 2021. Because I've had this debate with people say, well, Marcus Freeman's defense was overrated. I'm like, not really. When you consider, number one, they were very good in the second half of the year. And number two, that was not an incredibly talented football team on defense that year. It really wasn't. And you look at the secondary now and you think about who was playing on that team. And then you look at it now, even if you take Benjamin Morrison out, it's still a way more talented team. It was like Cam Hart and Kyle Hamilton and everybody else. So like you had those two top guys. And so people kind of think, oh, it's a good secondary. No, it wasn't. It was not a good secondary at all in a lot of ways. And he was able to mask that with certain things. And it was not good.
It's an invasive, surgery. The recovery time is 6 to 8 weeks. I would much rather I would choose, if I'm playing defensive back, I would much rather shoulder, upper extremity than a lower extremity to have to come back from, So I think the reaction, you just don't like it because most people just don't like it because it's Benjamin Morrison. We've heard players in the spring for several years have arthroscopic procedures done and they're back and they're fine and they play. I think it's happened probably the last 2 or 3 years. They've had somebody that had to have something arthroscopically done. And, any surgery is major surgery, in my opinion. Anytime you cut the skin, I consider that major. But it is considered a minor invasive surgery.
I'm much less concerned about his shoulder going into this year than I was Cam Hart's going into last year.
Absolutely. It was chronic.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Right. And he was coming off of a late season shoulder injury as well. Correct.
Yeah. Joseph Barrett. I thought it was Barnett for a second. Thank you for the mailbag. Sean is the best freshman class ever in women's basketball. Is this the best freshman class ever in women's basketball, considering players Juju, Malaysia, Hannah, Madison Booker, etc.?
Well, I don't know about best ever because I have to study, but I think the thing is there's been so many more opportunities for these freshmen to come in.
Yeah,
and I think
that's true.
I think that's a big thing, but it's like this is the best group of scoring freshmen I've seen in a long time. Like that I can say in a while. I can't say that I studied women's basketball enough. So I've actually followed women's basketball for a long time because I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Norfolk area when I was in high school. Back when Old Dominion, you remember when they made that season run, they played Tennessee and lost in the title game. I think it was Shamika Holdsclaw was on that team, I believe. I saw how good women's basketball can be back then. And of course, that's when, UConn made their run, and then Notre Dame had a title team right after that. And, so I've always respected it, but I think it's a lot of it is this is just a unique group because they can score so effectively. And I'll be honest with you. I think another part of it too is we've seen some great freshman classes. What you're seeing now, and I know people are going to disagree with this, is there's a lot more people paying attention to the women's game now because of what we're seeing with like Caitlin Clark and some of these other teams that have kind of stepped up as teams with a lot of personality. And there's more personalities in the coaching ranks in the women's sport now, where it used to be just kind of dominated by, you knew who Gino was, you knew who Pat Summit was, but you had to really be a fan to know like who Tara Vanderveer was, or Nancy, who was the Wendy Larry at Old Dominion, where now it's like you've still got Gino, but you've got more there's a lot of people that know who Dawn Staley is, who know who Niall Lively is. So you're starting to see more of that. And I think that adds a little bit more flavor to it as well. So I think a lot of it is just there's just more eyes on the sport right now. And so we're now recognizing this freshman class where 10 years ago, most of us wouldn't know what a Juju Watkins was. We didn't know Hannah Hidalgo because we'd still follow Notre Dame. But we would know a lot of these other players. And who's Paige Beckers? Like, what does she do? Is she in a movie or something like that? You know what I mean? We if they didn't play for our team, we wouldn't know.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot more eyes being put on the sport now, maybe than there has recently. That's just my take. I could be way off base, but I think that's part of it too. Is and so maybe we don't remember some of those freshman classes that would have been. And I also think how good UConn was for a long time. It kind of drowned out everybody else. there just wasn't a lot of oxygen in the room. But some people might argue UConn's had freshman classes as good as this back in the day.
That's
You know what I mean? Like,
their class, not everybody else. Just their class.
Exactly. Like, who Diana Rossi coming? Who was she a freshman with? You know what I mean? Like, who was Brianna Stewart a freshman with? You know what I mean? So,
Maya Moore.
Yeah, those would always be I'm actually going to go look that up now, Sean.
And like he forgot, look, Michaela from LSU. Forget Angel Reese. She's the best player on the team as a true freshman.
Yes. Yeah. I've always kind of felt Angel Reese was a little overrated. She's a good player, but it was more of, she was a good piece on a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say this. I'm not surprised that LSU is not quite as good as people thought they're going to be this year, because I just felt there was too many personalities and transfers in kind of for their own reasons, as opposed to they want to go win a championship. We'll see if they can turn it on in tournament time, though. So far, first 2 rounds, they did.
Yeah.
They put a couple whoopings on some people in the first 2 rounds, but we'll see how it goes as they kind of get in the next couple rounds. So we'll see.
Adam Benami, thank you for the mailbag. How would you rate Jadarian Price's catching out of the backfield? Love and him comparable in that department?
They're different. Like, Jadarian actually has pretty good ball skills for a running back. Like, I think he had like 30 catches as a senior. We've seen him in practice. Like, he can catch swing routes, he can catch check downs. He can actually catch some stuff down the field. Like, I could see him running. Remember what Tommy was killing people with a couple years ago, early in 2022? Those angle routes to like Audric and Tyree. Jadarian would be deadly in those type of things. And I could even see him on some wheels and some seam routes. But he's a running back. He catches like a running back, right? Like, he's a good catching running back. He's not Christian McCaffrey, Jeremiah Love, where like if Christian McCaffrey would have made the decision coming out of college, like, look, because he kicked off the whole sitting out bowl games thing. He started kind of that trend. Let's say he'd say, you know what? My body's been beat up. I'm trying to think of my long-term health, and I think my best bet in the National Football League is to play wide receiver. He might have still been a first-round draft pick, Sean. I mean, because he can legit line up and run routes and catch the ball like a wide receiver. That's what makes him unique. Jeremiah Love is more like that, where Jadarian is more like a really good pass-catching running back, where Jeremiah could legit move to wide receiver and be a starter at Notre Dame. Jadarian is more theoretic, where he could put up numbers, but you always knew he was better at running back. You always knew he was kind of a running back. And so to me, that's the difference between the two. And it further complements what they are, because, the way you can use them together. Sean,
my only thing, would you think, yeah, I totally agree with you. As far as Jeremiah Love, would you view him more as a Reggie Bush or more of a Christian McCaffrey?
Ooh, probably more of a Christian McCaffrey. I always viewed Christian as more explosive than Reggie was. Like, Reggie was always super shifty, but Reggie always had a little bit of Pete Warwick in him, where he was fast, but he wasn't like burner fast. I think one of the biggest misconceptions I've always felt about Christian McCaffrey is I don't think people appreciate how fast he was. And so that to me is kind of, when I look at him, I kind of view a guy that Jeremiah is more, he's a vertical guy that can also make people miss. That's how Christian is. Christian's ideally one cut and go, where Reggie was always he hunted for that chance to embarrass you.
Yeah.
And he had good speed, but he wasn't. And their 40 times were probably kind of close, but Christian, I always thought, played faster than Reggie. And Reggie was one of the best players I've ever seen. So was Peter Warwick. And this isn't me criticizing him at all, because I've always felt sometimes he overrates speed a little bit.
You're being a hater.
I know, right? But it's just more style of play. Christian was more of one cut go, vertical. Reggie was more shifty and elusive and catch him in screens. And, Reggie was more catch the ball out of the backfield and go do something with it, where Christian was like, I'm catching a seam route 40 yards down the field for a touchdown. It's just different. And Jeremiah is more like that, in my opinion. So, yeah, good question, Sean. Very good question. Okay, we got a lot of the questions about Benjamin Morrison's injury, so I think we've kind of addressed all those.
Bobby asks, who wins the fourth corner job this year, Lewis, Tucker, Bill, or does the freshman show up and become that guy?
Well, I don't think Micah Bell's in that conversation.
Right, he's nickel.
Right. I think right now it's Clarence Lewis would be my bet
Mm-hmm.
to be that guy. Yeah.
But Leonard Moore, some of the freshmen, it will be interesting to see them in the fall.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's get up to this one.
Bobby, yes, thank you for the mailbag. If we can lock up Mark Zachary, relatively soon, does that help with Damian Shanklin? Do they have a relationship? Being Indy boys, Shanklin may be the most important target left on the board. Agree or disagree?
Shanklin may be the most. No, I don't think so because of the presence of Marco Jones. If they can get Marco Jones, I still feel really good about that.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, I don't know what's going on. There's like something making a really loud noise on your end, like something on your mic. Is something hitting your mic?
No, my mic is not close to anything.
Okay.
Let me look around and see if it's something.
Do you not hear it? Can you hear? It's like a boom, 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 boom.
No, I don't hear it.
Maybe it's on.
Not coming through my headphones.
Okay, who knows? Maybe
no. Because I did a show earlier today and something was coming through my headphones that no one else heard.
No one else heard? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like.
So whatever's haunting you earlier is now haunting me.
Everybody was laughing at me. Even the left was looking at me weird. Like,
you all right, man?
Right. I'm like, hey.
I can feel it. You know, it's like
I don't know what it is.
Remember that scene in Friday when Smokey got that tarnished little something and he was in Debo's pigeon coop?
Yeah.
He always
he's like looking around.
You know, like I ain't been right ever since. Oh my goodness gracious.
Coleman Smith, thank you for the mailbag. Specifically for BD, since you're a former quarterback, who do you like better, Smeagol or Ryder Lyons?
I personally prefer Ryder Lyons, but I mean, I'd be happy with either one of those guys. My personal preference, I like a guy that can do a little bit more with his legs. That's just my personal preference. I mean, it shouldn't surprise any of you who knew who were my favorite quarterbacks growing up on my formative years. In college, it was Tony Rice, and the NFL is John Elway. Guys, I like quarterbacks can move. And so if I have a choice between the two, I take it. But if Brady Smeagol wanted to come to Notre Dame, would I take him? Yeah. I would not say no to him. I would not say no to Ryder Lyons. I would not say no to Brady Hart. I would not say no to Grubbs. Like you were talking earlier, Shane, you're talking about win-wins. This is a win-win-win-win. You take any of those four guys that wants to come, and you got a heck of a quarterback in this class, no doubt. But if I had a preference, I'd go with Ryder just because stylistically he's more in line with that. I want to be able to do some read zones. I want to have a guy that can make plays when things break down. And I've always kind of felt Brady was a little bit more of a pocket guy, like a pure pocket guy than the others. But he's really good in that pocket, Sean. And that's the thing. He's a smart kid, good frame. I think his arm's going to get a little bit more zip coming out of it as he gets older. But he's this real smart kid, accurate, makes good decisions, big frame. There's a lot to like about him, but Ryder's just more of a playmaker. But my top two guys are Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart, and whatever order you want to put them in.
Yeah,
those are my top two guys. Those are dudes. Sean, do you have kind of a pecking order for that group? And I'm kind of back and forth depending on whose film I watched most recently too. That's just kind of how close they all are for me. But it's like Brady, Noah, Ryder, and Brady Hart, Noah, Ryder, and then Brady Smeagol would be my order.
Yeah, Ryder and Brady Hart are my top two. Brady Smeagol, for me, it's not so much the film as it is Malik having coached against him and seeing him grow up and being very impressed with him and knowing him and having that kind of background, makes me say, okay, yeah, I trust your eyes and I trust your gut on this kid. But I mean, we're talking about razor thin difference. in preference from like day to day,
Which
week
top
to week.
50 quarterback do you
Yeah.
like more?
Yeah.
Right.
Quinn Kibler, thank you. Looks like we're using a clap as cadence. Is this something noteworthy, or is it just kind of whatever?
Well, it's noteworthy because it's new,
Mhm.
and there are pros and cons to every type of cadence you can use. Every type, not cadence, every type of snap triggering mechanism that you want to use, whether it's cadence, whether it's verbal. I never understood Notre Dame's insistence on being a cadence oriented team that was so purely shotgun. And so you wonder, why do they have issues when they're playing on the road? Because they're purely verbal. There's also issues with if you're a clap oriented system. If you're not good at mixing it up, then teams are going to get a read on you, and that's how they know to if you're clap and within a second the ball's coming, linebackers, D linemen are going to figure that out on film, and they're going to have your stuff down. They're going to be coming at you. So you've got to be able to do that, and then that can allow your center to kind of determine it, or there may be a check of, clap 2, clap 3 kind of thing. And so you have to have something like that where the clap becomes the same as the verbal cadence. It's like, hey, on 3. Well, we're not saying anything. Yeah, on 3. And now it's coming. Right. So I got to clap third time before you know what I mean? So there's all types of things you can do. But I prefer in a shotgun based team that is going to be more tempo oriented in this era with 90,000 to 100,000 seat stadiums you may be playing in on the road. I think it's easier for me to, in my opinion, to thrive with more of this clap based system than a cadence based system where, Notre Dame's struggling to every road game they played in the last few years, they have struggled with getting snaps off on the road in big games. Why? Because it's harder to hear. It's hard. Sean, you and I grew up back in the day, right? They'd have trouble hearing the quarterback when he was under center in some of these stadiums. You're now going to hear him when he's 5 yards behind the center. You know what I mean? There's a reason that they walk up to the line and tell people changes because they can't hear me from back there. It's not to hide it because I'm screaming as loud as I can to make the check, right? So I think it's better. You just got to do it right. It's like anything else. You should do it right. And if they were under center, then I'd say, yeah, go with cadence.
Yeah.
But they will be under center a little bit. They'll be under center at Notre Dame more than he was at LSU, but I don't think he's going to be under center a lot. So clap is to me the way to go. You have a preference on the 2 or anything?
The 3 are what? Cadence, clap, and the foot.
Yeah.
Foot raising?
They don't do that as much anymore.
Right.
Or sometimes people do a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
You can give a call as you're lining up. You give a call, whether it's going to be clap or verbal. You can make calls and kind of do a little bit of both. I think that can be a little confusing.
Tricky and dicey, yeah.
Yeah, so because it takes one guy to not get that first call, and then you're
you messed up from that point. Yep. John Leahy, thank you for the mailbag. How do you view Jay Mickey Sealy at Notre Dame, and what can he do this spring, summer to get closer to it?
Julian Love. That's my ceiling for Jaden Mickey. Like, honestly, like, really good player. Is he a lockdown, go cover their best guy man-to-man all game? No. Neither was Julian Love. I'll take a Julian Love on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's his ceiling. A very impactful, ball-hawking, good tackling guy that you don't want to leave on an island all game against top guys. Like, he's not going to do to Marvin Harrison Jr. what Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart did. But there's other things, but I also could see him having 2-3 times as many breakups as Cam had, right? I mean, because of the way he plays. It's just a different style of play, and he's very good at it. But, to me, there's like Julian Love, and then there's like, that lockdown, dominant Devin Witherspoon, Will Johnson, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cam Williams, or Cam Hart, Benjamin Morrison type of guy. And I think Christian Gray is more like that. So both are very good. It's just, there's a reason that Clemson win at Troy Pride or win at Julian Love more than they win at Troy Pride in that game. because that particular matchup, they felt they could do more against Alohi Gilman and Julian Love than they could again. Now, they didn't have success against Julian Love, but there's a reason they went after him more, because they felt with the way that those guys ran and the plays they ran that they had a better shot. Because remember, they tried going at Troy early and they almost picked it on a deep ball, and they were like, I ain't doing that again. And so, because they felt the matchup was better against Julian, who was not. I mean, they saw Devin Funchess run, or Nico Collins run right by him against Michigan the first game of the year. They saw that. And but Clark Lee was smart. He played to Julian's strengths. And so he was a heck of a player. Mike Elko was good about that in 2017 as well. Play to Julian's strengths. And if you have to play, if you're smart and you play to Jaden's strengths, Jaden's a very good football player. Very good football player.
It's amazing you talk about that. I think Jaden Mickey came into Notre Dame very confident player, right? But then the transition into college football, it teaches lessons. Like what you got away with in high school, you can't get away with here, right? And I don't think he was going up against the strongest wide receiver room as a defensive back. And so now I think, of course, we don't even talk about, I can only imagine personally with trying to grow as a college football player and then dealing with the personal things that were going on in his life. For him to be who he is right now just speaks to who he is as a young man and how his parents raised him. It really does, because what he's been through.
They raised him to handle life
absolutely
well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he has definitely manifested that. So I think the sky's the limit for this young man. I think the comp you gave, whether Julian Love, Antoine Winfield, those type of guys that you can't necessarily just lock up one-on-one, but they can do that at certain times. And then Jaden Mickey, I think his aggression and the way he learned to play the game, or the way he played the game in high school, you have to temper that and mix that with technique and knowledge, right? You just can't come out here because they can use that aggression against you. Really good
six against Pitt one week, but the team the next week's going to hit you with 2 sluggo routes.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's
what did we see in the Ohio State game? He got beat aggression.
Yeah.
Right. The injury to Tariq, the very next play, his aggression. He's sitting. It gets beat. And, you have to learn. And I think we saw, like, when he filled in for Cam, when Cam injured his shoulder, or the hand, that was a hand injury for Cam, not a shoulder. What was that? Was that Wake Forest?
Against Pitt.
Pitt, yes.
Yeah. Because he went out and his arm went limp. And I'm like, oh, no, it's the shoulder again. And then we found out he just got his elbow dinged. And if you ever get your elbow dinged, it's like your whole thing goes numb for a minute. That's all it was. And I was told he could have gone back in, but they were like, they got a big lead and Jaden and Christian were balling. So there's just no need to do all that. So, yeah. Sean, there are a lot of really good questions today, man. A lot of really good questions.
Bobby, yes. Do you think Traore is ready to be the number 2 Viper yet? Or are we going to have to wait till 25 till we see his breakout potential? How much do you see Young playing this year?
Is he ready to be the number 2 Viper today? Too early for me to tell. I mean, we haven't seen one real team pair with pads on. He made a nice play today in an 8-play period. So I'll just say this. I hope so. And if he does earn that job, they're going to be better for it. And so that would be my hope, is that he does. It's just I shouldn't even say this too early. I should say more, we haven't seen enough to know either way. Guys, if you could understand how little we actually see in 5 periods, the way that practice is structured, it's just, and I'm not complaining. It is what it is. I'm just saying, like, it's hard for us to really make real evaluations of guys who we haven't seen. And like, I can watch, Jaden Thomas and be like, yep, Jaden's Jaden. I've seen a bunch of him. I can look at, Riley Mills and practice and be like, yeah, all right, cool. I don't need to watch him anymore today. Right. But like some of these guys like Boubacar, I need to see him do it. We haven't seen enough of it. He looks the part, Sean. I mean, he moves well. He's got explosiveness and length and strong hands and all that, but we got to see more of it. But I hope so. As far as how much Bryce Young plays, I mean, he'll be in the rotation this year. How much will that be early? Long way to go. Way too early for that. But, not just with what I have seen and what we've heard from Marcus Freeman, he's making his presence felt. He'll play. Will that be as the number 3 that gets 10 to 15 snaps a game? Will it be as a third down pass rusher? I mean, way too early for that, but I'll be shocked if Bryce Young's not somewhere in this rotation at some point in time this year, Sean. He's going to be one of those guys that's just too good to pass up, right? Too good not to play, I should say. That's a better way of putting it.
Carlos Garza, thank you for the mailbag. With the latest 2 injuries, does this in any way bring into question the new strength and conditioning coach's philosophy, or is it just something to not be concerned with?
Well, I don't think it's either one of those things. I said I don't know that we have enough. Like when it comes to this type of topic, like here's why some people are thinking this, because there was those rumblings about Lauren Lando from this time with the Broncos. Right now, you can take that however you want. Hey, maybe they had injury prone. Like they went and got Ronald Darby and then he got hurt. Well, Ronald Darby's been getting hurt his whole career. So is that because Lauren Lando's strength program, or is it because they got a defective player or a player with an injury history? I couldn't tell you. I didn't pay close enough attention. So because of that, and then you see these injuries, but I don't know that they have a lot of injuries. I didn't see a lot of guys on the bikes today. Yeah. And you had some guys out, like, for example, you're down a couple defensive linemen today because of illness. You're down a second quarterback, not because of anything. I mean, I don't think Lauren Lando's walking in there handing out the flu bug to people. You know what I mean? Like, I think it would be irresponsible for me to say, based on Riley Leonard having an aggravation of an injury that he sustained way before Lauren Landau was hired, and because Benjamin Morrison hurt his shoulder, something that happens, that all of a sudden I'm going to question Lauren Landau. I'm not going to do that. That'd be irresponsible of me. It would also be irresponsible for me to say, don't be concerned with it, guys. What I'm saying is it's too short a period of time for us to be too concerned with it, because we have seen spring injuries happen to Notre Dame and a lot of other people. Rod Moore just tore his ACL at Michigan's practice. They got a new strength coach. Is that why? Well, no, they had guys got hurt last spring too. I mean, that happens. This isn't a pattern for me. A pattern has to happen over more of a time. So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, Sean, that it's nothing to be concerned with. And I'm not going to tell you that this is a problem, Lauren Lando. What I'm saying is let's let it play out a little bit, because it could be an issue with Lauren Lando. That's something that's been said about him in the past. But if I were to say that now, that would be nothing more of me trying to say 1 + 1 = 2 in a scenario where I don't know that it's responsible to say that I know that it's both. It's 1 and 1. Mm-hmm. It may be 1 plus, and then we don't know what the other one is. So I'm not ready to say either one of these things is true or not true yet. Let's let it play out and see if we're continuing to have these little nagging things pop up in the fall. Because as of right now, you have 2 completely different injuries. Deion Colsey hurting his hand. What could he possibly do as a strength coach to make Deion Colsey hurt his hand? Like, you know what I mean? Like Riley Leonard, this is an issue that had to do with. This is more with when it comes to Riley Leonard. If you want to raise an eyebrow at somebody, it's the training staff, not the strength conditioning program. More so, that would be more of a question mark regarding Riley. So I'm just not ready to say either one yet, Sean. I just think it'd be irresponsible for me to say either one of those things is true. It could be one or the other. It could be nothing to worry about. It could just be freak coincidence. This is football, or it could be an issue with Lauren Landau. It could end up being that. But I just don't think there's any way that someone like me, who's not a strength conditioning coach, not a doctor, really knows enough to be able to look at the patterns and say over 5 practices and say, strength coach, that's a problem. Now, again, let's get to the end of fall camp and they're missing 12, 13 dudes because of, okay, now we might need to be thinking about this.
I think last spring, there were a lot of soft tissue injuries that really impacted guys being able to be second and third stringers, right? The depth wasn't there during the spring, especially on the defense side of the ball. Your freshmen weren't able to make it through. A lot of freshmen weren't able to make it through the spring without injury. I've yet to hear about a freshman. Keedron did have a hamstring, right? Keedron Young ended up with a hamstring that he's coming back from, and that's the only freshman we've
But
really
you're
heard
gonna
about.
have that.
Yeah,
You're gonna
yeah,
have a hamstring injury.
right, because it's different.
There are a bunch of them.
Yeah, college football practice is totally different than high school. It's just different. So, look, that's what I'm going to be watching, the soft tissue injuries and the recovery as well. Recovery is something to watch coming back from these injuries that bears watching. So, Chief Brody, is Carr actually slanging it, or is that being overstated?
He is. Look, I'm gonna tell you all right now. CJ Carr is one of those kids that when he throws the football, you're impressed by it, even if it lands 8 feet away from the intended target. You're like, man, that ball wasn't anywhere close to where it's supposed to go, but it looked pretty getting there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how CJ throws it. Kenny's got some of that in him too, Sean, where it's just like, I don't think Kenny made the right read. He shouldn't have thrown that ball into triple coverage, but man, it looked good getting into triple coverage. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's just how it is, buddy. You know,
You have to have audacity as a quarterback, regardless of your physical skill set. All the great quarterbacks they're audacious. Like they have the audacity to either make that decision and if you don't have the arm strength, you anticipate so well that you throw the guy open, or if you have that Patrick Mahomes special physical gift, you just make the throw or Josh Allen, you make the throw that no one else can make in that situation. It is great quarterbacks have audacity, man. They just do. They just do things and they're willing to do things. It goes back to what you talk. Brady Smigel might not have the greatest gifts physically out of the 26 quarterbacks, but he's audacious. Somehow, some way, he makes those throws.
Yeah, sorry, I just saw a response from Nate. Nate, go to Andy Milton fans comment at 410, Sean, and just yeah. But yeah, I mean, no, I think every bit of credit needs to be talked about with how CJ and how Kenny throw the ball. Just know that how good it looks does not have anything to do with, doesn't have all that much to do with, can he run the offense? Can he make the reads? Can he do all those things? CJ and Kenny are still a works in progress in that regard. But I'm just telling y'all right now, anyone that you saw it. Anyone that comes to a game this year is going to watch pregame and watch Kenny and CJ and be like, "That's pretty."
Mm-hmm.
It's like a guy with a sweet jumper. You know, Sean, I've seen guys that can shoot the ball well, and they got those really like Larry Bird was a great shooter. He had an ugly jumper. It was that, you know what I mean, just that, you know. And then I'd watch Reggie Lewis. I thought had an ugly jumper. It's just like it was all herky jerky. Man, that sucker went in. And then there's other guys that got sweet looking jumpers, and they shoot 32% from deep. You know, it's like, man, it looks good, man. But he just can't hit it. So it's about the end result. But at the end of the day, though, you guys are going to watch those kids in pregame and in the spring game, and you're like, man, that thing is pretty coming out of their hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty, real pretty. Now we just got to see if they can do those other things, Sean. If they have the other attributes that you were talking about, that's going to be the question.
Joe Allen, thank you for the mailbag. Was Dylan Faison the earliest 26 commitment? Was he the earliest ever after the pot of gold? Well, he was the first one.
Close, like of all the pot of gold.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look. They've had some guys commit as sophomores before. I'd have to go back and look and see, because like I know like Brad Carrico committed super early, and there's been a couple other guys. He's certainly close, Joe. I mean, not many guys have committed sooner than him, if anyone has. I'd have to go back and look though.
I mean, literally, it was almost. I mean, now. Well, you know the experience we had interviewing him, Beatrice, but now understanding how everything kind of played out, it was almost like he was just waiting for the offer to come.
He definitely was. Yeah, he definitely was. There's no doubt about it. But like, he beat CJ Carr by about 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
He even beat CJ from when CJ wanted to initially commit, because CJ committed in June. CJ wanted to commit in March,
Right.
but it would have been real close to CJ. CJ would have
Yeah.
been close to him if he was allowed to commit. And just for the record, I think CJ Carr's dad did the right thing in making CJ.
Absolutely. Think about it. Play it out.
Yep.
Yep.
Go see some more places. There were some other things going on that, as a parent, you're not afraid of your kid having to compete, but you also understand I'm also not an idiot, and I'm not going to put my kid in a situation where he's not going to be able to compete. Sean, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, who they were expected to get in the class in front of him, and the promises that were being made to that quarterback. I can understand. What day did he commit? Last guy to commit before him was Tyler Buckner in 2021. Tyler committed 10 days before Dylan Faison did. So he committed on March 8th of 2019. He was in the 2021 class. So there's at least one guy that committed before Jordan. But the whole sophomore committing thing is kind of new. It's kind of new. Jordan, but the guys that have committed, the 3 guys that I brought up, Drew Pine committed in April of his sophomore year, but it's mostly quarterbacks that have committed that early. Phil Dracovic committed super early as well. I think Phil was a sophomore when he committed as well. Let me see when Phil committed. Phil committed in May, so he actually beat Phil. Phil was the first commitment in that class. So, yeah, there's been a couple guys that have been close to that. But Tyler Buckner did commit earlier than he did. So, yeah, I'm not going to go all the way back to Brad Carico's class. I'm just not. But, yeah, there's at least one. We know of one that did it. Yeah. Yeah.
I know you can't say names, but any rumors on any of our better players transferring after spring practice?
Are we talking like real rumors? No real rumors. I mean, Jeremiah Love was supposed to commit after the season, according to the internet rumors. You know what I mean? So if we're talking real rumors, no, I haven't heard anything about their better players leaving. I mean, because why would a starter leave Notre Dame after spring? He could have left. He could have left in the fall. After the fall, if he was looking for payouts. So no, I haven't heard anything like that. Does that mean that somebody might transfer that we don't want to transfer? I'm not saying that at all. I haven't heard any real rumors of it. You're always going to hear that in today's age of, getting clicks is all that matters. But no, I haven't heard anything legitimate about anybody leaving.
Andy Milton fan, thank you for the super chat. Any players staying an extra year in college football that surprised you? BK's first excuse next year is the team is learning a new offense after losing Denver.
He'll think of something. I mean, Brian Kelly is the master of blaming something else other than him for success, and sometimes it's valid. I mean, he wouldn't be wrong in this case. I mean, you're learning a new offense with a new quarterback and a bunch of new receivers. Okay, and still not a very good defense. But yeah, he'll have something. Any guy staying that surprised me? I'd have to think about that. Well, I mean, I'll tell you one at Notre Dame, Xavier Watts. I mean, just a surprise. It didn't surprise me when it happened because I already kind of knew it was going to happen. But I kind of thought there was a good chance he was going to leave. I mean, you're like unanimous All-American. How much better than it can it get than that? And you find out why he's going to stay longer. But yeah, that was one. I'd have to think, Andy Milton fan. I'd have to think a little bit more on that one. But I mean, there's always going to be some guys. But like Michael Pratt not coming out this year, there's some guys that came out that surprised me. I thought Michael Pratt would have been better off either transferring up a level or coming back another year. But for him to come out with eligibility remaining in a year that was going to be a really deep draft class never made sense to me. And that was strange.
You know what was shocking? I thought some of the defensive players in Ohio State would come out. And the fact that JT, I definitely thought he was coming out.
Yeah.
Well, I think JT still would have been a top 15 first round pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Denzel Burke, absolutely. So yeah,
Well,
that was
that's
kind
the
of shocking.
NIL impact, Sean.
You're right.
I mean, like, look, because now a kid like him can say, "Hey, I still have team goals. I still have goals as a college football player. I want to accomplish." Denzel Burke, I mean, they both said the same thing. Like, look, I have things I want to accomplish, and now NIL can make it worth my while to stay. I mean, that was a factor in why some of the Notre Dame kids stayed. I'm just going to be honest with you. Yeah, I want to stay, but I also need to take care of my family, and now you can. And so I think this is where I say, Sean, there's I am so tired of the people that don't know what NIL is. You keep talking about pay for play. That's not NIL. NIL is putting a value on your name, image, and likeness. And that is a great thing for student athletes. And it's a great thing for the game of college football because more players and college basketball, more players are going to turn down leaving early to stay in college because they can monetize their skill, their talent, their personality, and those type of things. That is great for the game. The problem that we have right now, which is just crushing the game, is the open portal system and the fact that you have this pay for play stuff that's being given to kids that have never done anything. I don't like pay for play, but I'm a lot more understanding of someone wanting to give a transfer that kind of money to come than I am someone trying to give that to a high school kid. That's a much separate issue because that's not NIL. NIL is the number one quarterback in the country getting $1 million deal with some company that is going to go with him wherever he goes to college. That's the difference. You know, some basketball player getting a Nike deal, well, yeah, he's getting a Nike deal. Guess what? He's going to go to a Nike school, but it's not dependent on him going to Duke, right? Like Jaylen Brown. I mean, this is a little bit before the NIL stuff, but I mean, you heard the rumblings coming out. Jaylen Brown had a deal with Nike, but Nike didn't say you got to go to Duke or Michigan. It was pick a Nike school, and he went to Cal, which is a Nike school. Right. So to me, that stuff's good for the game as far as the current players getting that. So like that's what NIL should be for high school kids. You're a great player. You're a big name. We're going to pay you to go to wherever you go to school. We want you to be with us. We want you to be on board with us. Right. We may pay you a little extra if you go to this school or that school once you commit because now you're at a higher profile place. But I think NIL is a great thing, and because of exactly what you just said. And it's just the other things surrounding NIL have tainted it. And now you have kids who only focus on those things. That's more of a cultural, societal problem than it is NIL being the issue. It's like money is the root of all evil is the expression. It's not money is evil. It's what money can do to you. It's you being corrupted by money. Other people have made tons of money and they've used it to bring, glory to God's kingdom through it. Right. I mean, that you know what I mean? It's how you use the gifts that you've been given, not so much that this thing. It's like there's a passage, Paul's talking about, should we eat this meat that was used to sacrifice to idols? And it's like, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but if doing so causes others to stumble, it's not worth it. It's not the meat's the problem. It's the significance of what the symbolism of what it can mean, and so I think it's all those type of things. NIL is not the problem. It's the way it's being abused because of the open portal system and other things that has done it. But to your point, Sean, that's why college football is going to have a few more players next year, and college basketball is going to have a few more players coming back next year that otherwise may not.
Yeah.
And I don't see how that's not good for the game. As long as it's not like, well, I'm coming back, but I'm going over to this school because they offered me more money. That's not good for the game. But again, that's not NIL. That's the portal.
I think a pretty good story that just came out today, I think it's Michi Norris, leading scorer for South Carolina, and their resurgence on the men's side. Us going back to Ohio State where he played as a freshman. And they were like, why are you going back to Ohio State? He said, because the coach that I love the most is now the head coach. He's the one that recruited me to Ohio State. And John Diebler. He became the head coach, and I want to play for him. And I felt like that's a different reason. But you know what? I'm not mad at that. I'm like, that's the coach you trust the most. And you were the leading scorer for South Carolina. But, that's a new reason. And that to me, I'm like, that's a pretty decent reason, to go ahead and jump in the portal if it's allowed. I don't know about this multiple portaling, how many opportunities kids should have, even though I appreciate the reason. But you're right.
Well, and that's the thing is like, would he have left in the first instance if, like, what's his last name? What class is he in? What's Moochie's last name?
Moochie, he was a freshman last year, so that means he would have been
a
at
sophomore.
20.
Okay, yeah. So like, this is a kid that's going to for the third straight year is going to be playing for a different team.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if there was a closed portal system, he may have never left in the first place, and he's still getting to play for the coach that he wanted to play for. You know what I mean? So, that's kind of my thing. But it just, look, if you're going to make this move, understand this is final. And after this, there can be no more.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's frustrating. All right, let's get to some more of these, Sean. Here we go. Here's one from Nicholas Grosh.
Good. I'm glad you said his last name because I would have gone the other way.
I probably still got it wrong. I'm sorry, Nicholas.
With the expanded playoffs, should the scholarship limits be raised? At least 14 teams will be playing 14 games with a few others playing 16.
Yeah, I don't think the scholarship limit needs to be raised because of that. I don't. Look, guys, 85 players on a team is like almost twice as much as what NFL teams have on a week-to-week basis. As far as like players eligible, 85 is a lot. What needs to change is the manner in which coaches use their depth chart. That's what needs to change, right? Do a better job of, hey, you can't have starters on all your special teams if you're playing 16 games.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great way to utilize some of your younger players or use your depth more. Yeah, you can give your starting D tackle 60 snaps in that huge game against, USC, but he better not be playing more than 20 against Navy or Northern, you know what I mean? Like, because you're using the rotation early, and then if the game's over by halftime. But I think it's more about you got 85 dudes on your roster. You're a deep team if you're playing 40. Think about that, because if you're 44, you're a pretty deep team in that instance. So, yeah, you learn how do a better job as coaches using your depth. I don't think you need to jump to 10 more scholarships or 5 more scholarships. It's do a better job of building your roster to get to 85. Do a better job building your walk-on program to make sure that you're giving your team a better look and you've got some higher quality walk-ons, which Notre Dame has done for a while now. And then do a better job with your depth. Make sure if you got 5 running backs can help you, find roles for them. Don't give your star running back 20-plus carries every game of September if you want him to be healthy in December and January. So I think that's more of what needs to happen, Sean, as opposed to just let's add more. I mean, it's a fair question. I think it certainly should be discussed as, is this something we can do to take the burden off of these young men? Because the thing that's at the heart of what Nicholas is asking and what I'm saying is the burden needs to be taken off of young players more so. Yeah. NFL guys can do that, but they're 25, 28, 30 years old. Some of these kids are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Their bodies are not prepared to have the burden of a 16-game schedule.
Yeah.
At 70 snaps a game, at the tempo that they play. Because in the NFL, they don't have as many plays because the games go quicker. And so those are things that I think it's imperative that coaches do a better job of making sure you're managing workloads in practice and on game days. That's what I would say is more beneficial than expanding rosters. What do you think? What's your preference on that, Sean? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think where the scholarships are now was done for a purpose. It really keeps the elite teams from being able to stash stock. It is kind of giving a level of parity across college football. The only reason I would see that would be a positive of increasing the scholarships is because I feel like the transfer portal has hurt high school players when it comes to scholarship offers. So if that opens up 2 or 3 spots for 2 or 3 more high school kids, instead of them getting bumped down to possibly the lower levels and they get an opportunity to go to a Power 5 school, that could be a benefit. But other than that, as far as, the playoff and its impact, that is going to be a trial and error, right? You'll see how it goes with travel and everything. And you can always adjust the schedule, to help that and do some other things before you go to adding scholarships.
Couple things to consider, Sean. If you're going to leave the portal open, one thing I think that they should consider doing is adding a 5th year of eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
The average time of graduation nowadays, I've read, is like 4.5 years. And you're making it so much harder to graduate on time with all these things. The other thing to consider is maybe if a guy is a 5th year senior and he has graduated and he's graduated with a certain successful rate, took a real classes, had a certain, then, we're not going to count that 5th year senior scholarship towards your 85. So like Xavier Watts is a perfect example. The kid graduated in 3.5 years, basically. He's graduated. He graduated with very good grades. He's now a 5th year senior, saying, hey, look, you're graduating your players. That 5th year senior doesn't count towards your 85.
Mm-hmm.
I think, so I could see something like that I'd be okay with. You know what I mean? Or another one is capping transfers, capping the number of transfers that each team can add. You can only add, X number of transfers unless you're a new coach taking over. And then maybe you might give them 15, and if you give everybody else 7 a year, right? Because, you're going to lose guys and things like, you know what I mean? But that's something that I would consider, Sean, is to kind of stem some of this high volume of transferring so that teams can get back to being more reliant on high school recruiting. So there's a lot of different rule changes that I would consider.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 5th year of eligibility is one that I would consider, although I probably wouldn't go there. I really like, because I'm a big fan of doing anything to encourage teams to graduate their players and get them real degrees. And if that means, hey, if you have a 5th year senior that comes back, or if you have a senior that comes back, and like Xavier Watts this past year, the reason I used him is he was a graduated senior at Notre Dame. And he wasn't walking down the aisle with just a black thing on. He had some stuff around, you know what I mean? Like
right.
He had some success. I'm going to reward Notre Dame for creating that environment, and Xavier's scholarship won't count towards the 85. So, those are some things that I would strongly consider that could help with roster management. But at the end of the day, the number one thing to help with this is coaches doing a better job of managing the rosters that they have. They have 85 scholarship players. And here's the reality, guys. Notre Dame's got some scholarship players that are good football players. And they can help you. And so you're going to have 90 to 95 players that are good football players on your team. And when I mean help, meaning like I don't have to put this kid down on scout team all year because we've got this kid. And so that helps manage. So now I can maybe use 7 receivers in my Tuesday, Wednesday practices as opposed to 5, which is not, because like managing workload is not just about Saturday. It's about Tuesday, those hard Tuesday, Wednesday fulls as well, that you have to consider that too. What's that point in the year where you back off of some of that stuff, right? That's all part of the evolution that coaches have to go through. And you know who was the master of the stocking rosters was Notre Dame. Perfected that in the 50s and 60s. I mean, they were in 70s. They perfected that. And they're one of the schools that was, I believe, were one of the reasons why they said, hey, we need to, because they would just get Catholic school kids from all around the country, just load up their rosters, man. So I think the limits are, and it also hurts the other levels too, because now guys that would be, group of 5 guys are now Power 5 guys, and guys that would be FCS guys are now, and I don't know that helps those guys because they're not bumping up a level and all of a sudden they're playing a bunch. They're just filling a roster spot. And I don't know how much that actually helps the young men either. So I'm with you, Sean. Don't expand it at this point in time. We had a couple questions. Michael Johnson, any intel on Tyson Ford, and also Sam S. had a question about it. What's up with Tyson Ford? Is he ever going to make his way onto the field? I mean, he's still a redshirt
It's
freshman.
redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
Because he's been here early for 2 springs.
And he was a big name. He was a top, highly ranked guy. Yeah.
And it goes back to what people say. He was asked to do one thing and then switched and asked to do another thing in those 2 years. And he's just now getting to the point where he's getting settled. You're watching Jason Anye, who made his first true move last year in the spring. And now they're expecting even bigger things from him coming out of this spring to the fall. You have to give young men an opportunity to develop. He's literally a freshman as far as grade wise. He's still in his freshman year of college. He's just been here 2 springs. I think, this is his 3rd spring.
Yes, he's sophomore. Like he's like, yeah, he was an early enrollee, I believe.
Yeah, he came in with Jaden. You're right. You're
yeah.
right.
So,
right.
but he's a redshirt freshman.
He's a redshirt freshman
heading into his He's got 3 years of eligibility left.
Yeah.
It's more like if Tyson Ford was some 3-star kid nobody had ever heard of, we wouldn't be asking where's Tyson Ford. It's because Sam and Michael. That doesn't mean your question's unfair. It's a very fair question.
No,
because he was a very talented kid that we all had high expectations for, and he hasn't panned out yet. Hopefully that light goes on, but he's out there. He's at practice. We'll just kind of see what kind of development that he has. But I will say this, Sean, though, I do believe he's entering kind of an important period, though, because it's kind of like, this next year, like if we're not going into next spring being like, hey, Tyson started to show himself a little bit in the fall. Like if he doesn't do something in the fall, it's going to make me be like, I don't know that he's that guy.
Yeah. I think we said it, we were talking before the show and we were like, red shirt sophomore, if you haven't started to make a move, then more than likely it might not happen. You might have to look elsewhere, to find playing time and to get on the radar, So I really don't like Tyson Ford is the type of kid that I'm not pressing to hear about him. And I think that goes into the earlier question about Brennan Vernon and Devin Houston. I'm not pressed to really hear.
Because there's good players, good older players ahead of them.
Yeah, I'm not pressed. And that's a good thing, right? Because we've seen the days where those guys had to play at Notre Dame. Tyson Ford had to play a kid like him. A kid like Devin Houston had to get on the field and play at Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman has created an atmosphere where those kids can have their own path at Notre Dame, and the team can still win games. So, and ultimately, as we always say, the young men decide. They decide. Like the hard work, who they are, what they can do, how they perform in practice. Ultimately, they decide.
It should certainly at least be that way.
Yeah, we know there are certain things that
that's not the norm, though. Those bad situations aren't the norm, and I think that Notre Dame's coaching staff is much better about that in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there was some interesting conversation. So like Jim Halloran asked this question: what if a team loses 15 and the Portland can only take 7? So first of all, 7 was just kind of a number I was throwing out.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to do it, but and then he said, just saying, if you limit how many transfers you can take, do you need to limit how many can leave? You can't limit how many kids can leave. I mean, if kids want to leave, they want to leave. But it's I think most kids are going to have someone around them that's going to understand the concept of supply and demand. And if 15, 20 kids are leaving from every school, then there's going to be 15, 20 spots that somebody's got to fill. So what tends to happen is if there's fewer spots to go around, then you're going to have fewer kids leave. And when the kids do leave and they're stuck and you see these type of things, then it sends a message to the next group of kids like, hey, you better have a landing spot on this one. And so, what the NCAA could do is, there's a lot of things that them or whoever, runs it is to say, hey, look, you know, I can't tell kids they can't leave, but I can certainly, set rules that schools wouldn't have to vote. You'd have to vote on it as the schools. If the schools choose to do it, then they're accepting it.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, hey, look, we can only take X amount of transfers. You'll have some that won't like it, but if others will. And again, there are always exceptions, as I was saying, for like a coach that's a new coach. Kalen DeBoer should be allowed to take more than that 7 if that was the number he went with, because he's a new coach, and he'd have to, if you lose more than 7, you can match that number in that first year or something like that, right? Like Brent Venables should have been allowed to take more than 7 when he took over Oklahoma because Lincoln Riley rated his roster. You know what I mean? So like, I'm not screwing over him because a coach left. Now, I've always said, if a coach leaves, I think the school should have a window where kids can't leave yet. Let us hire the new coach. There's a 30-day window. You can't jump in the portal if you know what I mean? And if the portal's not open, because there's like that new exception, like so Michigan kids could jump in even though the portal's closed. Bama kids can leave, whether it's 2 weeks or a month or whatever. Let there be a window where they can't jump in the portal and outside of normal portal times to give that coach that school a chance to say, hey, look, here's what we got going on. Here's who the new coach is going to be. Let's just let the new coach get hired, and then you guys can then make your decision. Then they can open up after, let's say, 20 days. Then they can jump in. If you fire a coach, nope, all bets are off. You chose for that coach to leave. It was your choice. So like, I'm trying to think of like Brent Venables. Oklahoma shouldn't get punished because Lincoln Riley just up and left. Right. LSU fired their head football coach.
Right.
That's a different deal. I'm using them as an example, not as Brian Kelly didn't do anything wrong. But so like that's going to make you think twice about, okay, are we going to fire a coach who's going 9-3 or 10-2 every year because he's not good enough? Maybe Florida would have thought twice about firing Dan Mullen if that were the rule or whatever. So there's a lot that would go into it for me. But at the end of the day, as coaches, you also got to do a better job of building your rosters and maintaining your rosters. Make sure you bring kids in that aren't that way. It's like with anything, Sean. It's like, hey, if a kid's only going to come play for you because you're offering him the highest package, then don't be shocked when he leaves for the exact same reason. I think I've used this before, but like, you have a buddy in high school who hooks up with a girl who's seen another dude, and then a month later he's shocked that girl cheated on him with another dude, vice versa. Right. It's like, well, dude, did you really think you were that special? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why are you surprised by this? And it's same thing here. I mean, you only got this kid because you gave him the most amount of money, and you're shocked that he jumped into the portal a year later for more money. That's on you, bro. That's on you. So do a better job of building your roster. And I think Notre Dame's done a pretty good job of that because, like, hey, we're not going to go buy a player. But you know what? Because of that, we know that most of our kids are here for the right reasons, which means we don't have to match dollar for dollar every offseason to keep a kid here.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated thing, Jim. And so you pushing back on it is very fair because it's not as simple as just, this is it. There's got to be some, okay, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? And what's our end goal, right? What's our end game here? And so that's kind of, those are things that I would look into.
So, man, it's kind of like, it's very important how you run your business. Everything is not about the balance sheet.
Yeah.
How you do things matters, and you have to deal with consequences of how you handle business, within the parameters of running business. So, like you said, you have to think about that. What's the impact? Why are all these kids, like, why are 15 kids leaving our program?
Right.
Why?
And it's going to make it where coaches can't chase off as many kids.
Yeah.
Because that's the other. Because sometimes you lose 15, Sean. To your point, why'd you lose 15? Well, you ran off 9 kids. You may want to rethink that.
Yeah.
Because now you don't have it. You ran off those 9 kids because you wanted to open up 15 spots to get portals. Well, if you can't open up 15 spots to get portal, then you're gonna, you're not going to chase off many kids because most of the kids, you're just going to have to deal with the kids that you actually did lose that you maybe didn't want to lose. And so that's kind of how I'm at. I mean, just look, these coaches get made a lot of money. we should, and I'm not one of those people that's like that clown for the Washington Post. Brian Kelly's making this much money when there's people hurting us. That's not Brian Kelly's fault.
Right.
Brian Kelly has created himself at a certain level of value to that institution that they felt he was worth making this amount of money.
Yes.
God bless America. You know what I mean? And if Brian Kelly wants to use his money to help the community, he can. If he doesn't, then he doesn't. But as much as I dislike Brian Kelly, every time I drive to Notre Dame's campus or over towards Graper, Maine, I see this big sign on the side of the hospital. Brian and Pocky Kelly, I think it's like breast cancer or something like, center.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So say whatever you want about him, but Brian Kelly used his name and money to make an impact in his community in a lot of different ways. So I'm all good with that. I can't say, these coaches are making money. Yeah, because they create that kind of value. However, because you're making a lot of money, I'm not one of those people who's like, I'll tell you, you shouldn't make that much money. No. You're making a lot of money. Therefore, my expectations for how you conduct yourself and your expectations for your role and responsibility for making this game better is very high, right? What's the expression? With great responsibility or with great power comes great responsibility, right? Well, to me, with big salaries comes higher level of accountability and responsibility, right? You want to be able to act however you want? Don't become a pastor. Right? I mean, you signed up for this job. You knew what the responsibilities were, and you knew the consequences if you didn't. Don't lower the standard. So again, if you want to be a head football coach at a place like University of Notre Dame, cool. You're going to make a lot of money, and you've earned it because you're going to create billions to your institution over the next 10 years that you're making $5, $6, $10 million a year, right? But understand there's a great responsibility that comes with this. It goes far beyond just winning football games. And if institutions started holding these coaches to the higher standards when it comes to, you don't like this rule, then do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do a better job of building your roster, right? Don't piss and moan about how kids are leaving your school and taking higher money when that's exactly how you got most of your roster. You know what I mean? So how about you do a better job of making sure that you're recruiting the right type of kid into your program? So those are all things that I think need to be levied instead of just, government protect us or whining about this or whining about that. Take a stand. That's why I love what Nick Saban did. I know it pissed people off, but he said, hey, I'm going to give you all a warning. If you don't change this rule, I'm going to start doing it. That's what he said in year one. I'm going to start doing this if you guys don't change the rule. And they didn't. And he said, fine, I'm going to go arguably my best back-to-back recruiting classes ever. And that's why I laugh when people are like, well, Nick Saban couldn't build the rosters he used to build, so he left. I'm like, you guys don't pay attention to recruiting at all, do you? Because Nick Saban just landed 2 insanely good recruiting classes back-to-back in the NIL era, right? Because he said, if you don't change the rule, I'm going to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And because they didn't change the rule, I wish there were more coaches willing to say, this isn't right. So what are you going to do about it? Like, I give props to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has said, I don't like this. This is bullcrap. But I also know if I don't win, I'm going to get fired. So I'm going to take advantage of it.
Right.
Just so you know, I don't like it, but this is the rules. And so, I mean, if you don't like it, you shouldn't do it. Well, that's silly because then I don't have a job. Then I'm fired. I got a family to support and all those kind of things. So, it gets me fired up, man. It gets me fired up. Let's get back to some more football questions.
Matt Ginther, thank you for the mailbag. Do you see Notre Dame running more 21 personnel this year?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. I think, we've seen it, Sean. We've seen it in practice with our own eyes.
Yeah.
And normally I would not comment on that specifically, but they've literally put out videos from Notre Dame that show both of those kids on the field together. So, that's on you. Don't get mad at me because I've talked about it. You've put out videos with both of those guys on the field. So whatever.
Yeah.
We'll definitely will. And it's not just because Mike Denbrock, that's what he does. Mike Denbrock's never used much 21 personnel. What Mike Denbrock's been great about is using the personnel he has. And at Notre Dame, he has a loaded running back room. Right now, we're seeing exactly what you and I talked about all offseason, Sean, playing out right now. Notre Dame is down 2 running backs right now. Jabron's banged up and Keedron's banged up. and you wouldn't know it because the number 3 guy now is Aeneas Williams. He's pretty flipping good too. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, like, dude, this is what you do. We're down 2 guys and nobody notices because we're still loaded.
Yep.
Because of how good these other guys are. So now, do I think they'll do it like 30, 40 times a game? Probably not. You know, I think they're too good at receiver and other positions, but I think it is going to be something that we see more of. Certainly.
Sam, that's thanks for the mailbag. What is Marcus Freeman's in-game role in play calling? Does he give any sort of direction as to personnel schemes, run, pass volume, etc.?
Some of that stuff. A lot of the things that Marcus Freeman does in this regard, Sean, is done during the week.
Mm-hmm.
Like once you get in the game, you kind of have an idea of what we're trying to do. Now, there are times in games where Marcus Freeman is going to have to get Marcus Freeman. One of his most important roles is being a bridge between the offense and the defense. And so, like, you're in a situation where you're coming out on offense, or your defense is just starting to get a little gassed, and you know the defense, they're throwing something at it. Our guys aren't prepared for. You may say, "Hey, Denbrock, we need to." Let's come out, maybe run the ball early here and slow this thing down just for a little bit because we got something going on over here. You know what I mean? That's something he'll do. That's not dictating run pass volume as much as saying, because it doesn't necessarily mean run the ball. You could be saying, hey, let's throw some screens. Let's use our quick game, you know, and then if an opportunity breaks open and you break it open, you're not saying, hey, go on a 13-play drive, but it's like it's slow the tempo down, you know, things like that. Or, yeah, hey, we're going to use a timeout here because we're trying to slow this thing down a little bit because our defense needs some time to figure something out or catch a breather, or the offense does. So there's that aspect of it. Communicating with coaches, hey, we're in 2 down. You know, soon as Marcus Freeman feels that the offense is in 2 down territory, he's got to be on the thing. Hey, Coach Denbrock, right now, you know, we're in 4 down. So keep that in mind with your play calling. Because if you wait to tell a coach on till 4th down that you're willing to go for it, then you've missed an opportunity for him to make sure he's doing the right things play calling wise on 3rd down. You know, you got to either know those situations going in or be on the phone with him saying, hey, we're now in this situation. Just so you know, we're down 14. We're running out of possessions. Once you get past the 40, going, you know, your own 40, anything, you know, 4th and 5 or less, we're going for it. Well, 3rd and 8, he's going to say, we don't need to get 8. You know, if we can, great, but let's make sure we at least get 4,
right?
3 to get ourselves in that situation. That's going to impact play calling. That's where he'll have an impact, is things like that area. And then, of course, are we going for it? Are we punting it? You know, Marty Biagi's not running a reverse on punt return or kick return or something like that unless he gets the okay from the boss, right? Your kicker doesn't have the authority to do an onside kick if he sees a certain alignment, if that hasn't been cleared by the boss man before the game or in certain scenarios. So it's more stuff like that, Sean, that's in-game roles, as opposed to, hey, let's run smash here because he may do some of that, but from what I'm told, Coach Freeman's tried to not do that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if he didn't, he would start trying to dictate too much defensively.
Yeah.
And he's chosen to
I think the fact that he started out not wanting to do that when he clearly, because of certain things that existed, had every right to micromanage early on in his head coaching career. Every right to micromanage. But I think him having a big picture mentality of who he wanted to be as a head coach allowed him to stay true to what he wanted to be, big picture, even though situations might have dictated that he has the right to go ahead and micromanage. But now, I think one of the things I love seeing him, I love people in their element, right? And even though he's a head coach, coaching the linebacker position is his element. And being able to see him work with the linebackers the way he has this spring with a new linebacker coach, and not pretty much micromanaging, but just having the confidence not to have to worry about the offense. Having the confidence in Mike Denbrock, Gino, Mike Brown, Dylan McCullough, and that staff. And now having confidence with his guys on defense being there under Al Golden. And as hands-on as Al Golden is, as well. He has the freedom and confidence now to say, let me go work with my guys. These are my young guys. These are the guys that I brought in to change the athleticism in my first recruiting class as defensive coordinator. Let me go rock with them and let me spend time. It's the same thing Nick Saban does with defensive backs at Alabama. He has so much confidence in his staff that he can still coach his passion position, which is defensive back play. He's hands-on with them, even as the head coach. And see, when you can do that, I think that gives you the ability in game, if you're doing that big picture in the offseason, once you get in game, you stay big picture, right? And that Ohio State game is a learning lesson, big picture as a head coach, right? You can nitpick, you can say, well, I give the responsibility to my, but you know, as a head coach, that goes back to preparation. Like, yo, guys, we have to be better prepared for those moments, for those situations. That's my job as the head coach, to have you prepared during the week. This is when that takes place. And now when we go into Saturdays, it's about the things you pointed back. Like, okay, let's slow this down a little bit. Not so much play calling, but situations, managing the game, knowing when to press the issue, knowing when to pull things back, knowing when you need to go ahead and make a move this way. That is something, in my opinion, that Marcus Freeman, big picture, had the foresight to see how he envisioned himself on game days and what those responsibilities and weights he wanted to bear would be. And he was patient enough not to micromanage early in his career, when he had every right, in my opinion, to micromanage certain situations. And he got bit, but in certain situations, by not micromanaging and giving people full autonomy that didn't live up to what they were supposed to live up to. But in the long run, it's going to pay off for him, his growth as a head coach.
I think he also had that adage of treat coaches like you wanted to be treated when you were a coach. You know, I wanted authority to do certain things as assistant coach. I wanted to say, hey, if you trust me enough to hire me here, then let me do my job. Give me direction on what you like, what's the directive, what's the philosophy, what's this, what's that. But you hired me to do this job. Let me do the job. And as we talked about in 2022, I think he erred on the side of too much of that early on. And now I think he's found a little bit more of that sweet spot of, this is what I'm expecting of you. As long as you're doing what I'm expecting you to do, you're going to love me because I'm going to let you do what you do. Right. But you start not doing that. Like, from what I'm told, he just kind of lets Chad and the recruiting office do what they do. Right. Because the results speak for themselves. He's going to let Mike Mickens, do what he does because there's a proven track record there. He should not let Max Bulla have as much freedom as Mike Mickens. That's got to be earned to a degree. But you also hired Max Bulla, so there should be some level of trust of, and I use Max Bulla because that's Marcus Freeman's baby linebacker. Like, so yeah, be there, coach him, because if you're Marcus Freeman, you're not just coaching Drake Bowen and Jack Kaiser. You also should be coaching Max Bulla. And especially at your position, since that's your position. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that, because that's every assistant coach's dream, is to have a coach that has enough faith in me to let me go coach my position. And if you didn't have faith in me, why'd you hire me to do this job? I don't understand that. So, yeah. Yep.
There we go. Jason Rose, thank you for your mailbag. Hey, guys, on Indy's 2 playoff teams, who was a guy that was really good that didn't get the credit they deserve?
I've actually thought about this one before, Sean. I have 2 guys, one guy in 20 and one guy in 18 that I never thought got enough credit for their how important they were on those teams. 2020, Sean Crawford. And no, Sean Crawford was never the player he would have been without the major injuries, but he was so smart and so tough and such an important veteran piece to that. And he tended to have some of his better games and some of the biggest moments. He was really good against Louisville in 2020 in the game. They almost they had to hold Louisville to 7 points because their offense could do nothing in that game. So he was one in 2020. 2018, I thought Chris Fink was really a very important piece to that receiver puzzle in 2018. Like I think of the first game, like USC's whole game plan was stop the run and don't let the trees beat us outside. So Chris Fink said, okay, you don't have a plan for me? Word. So he goes out and puts a 100-yard first half together. They were down 10-0 in that game. And Chris Fink played a huge role in sparking that offense, and then they went on and rolled in the second half. But I thought Chris Fink was – you think of the touchdown catch against Michigan, that was just such a great play. Like, he was just such a clutch player in 2018. You know, just went off against Virginia Tech early, if you remember that one. He was a really important part of that we don't talk enough about. Not that he was a great player, but he was an incredibly important player and a great complement to the big trees outside.
Yeah.
Because he was such a shifty route runner and could do some different things. And he was clutch, man. I mean, he was clutch that year for them. And that's what made that 2018 team so good, Sean. That was not the most talented Notre Dame team we've ever seen. It was talented, don't get me wrong, and in certain spots, very talented. But you also had some very money players. You know, I've talked a lot about Khalid Kareem being a money player for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
In ways that we just never really saw from Julian Okwara. Drew Tranquil and Tavon Coney were money players. Julian Love was a money player. Alohi Gilman was a money player. You know, I mean, I can think of two plays off the top of my head. The breakup against that big tight end in the end zone against Michigan when Michigan was starting to come back, which forced a field goal. And then that strip at the 2-inch line against Vanderbilt. You looking back now, if he doesn't make that play, that season could have gone a whole different direction, brother.
Yeah.
You know, and so he was another money play. They had so many of those type of guys in 2018 that's why those are my two guys, Sean. Who are a couple guys that pop off for you?
I think Troy Pride was underrated, in my opinion. I think Troy Pride was really good to almost a similar path as Cam. Like, teams really did go at Cam, so you didn't see the numbers. And so therefore it gave the effect of, man, you know, is he really that good? And Troy Pride was, like you pointed out, the Clemson game. Clemson, they tried him early, and then it was like, all right, we're not barking up this tree anymore. So Troy Pride would fall into that category for me. I thought Tony Jones, man. Tony Jones carried the load when they had injuries and other situations. Tony Jones
Dex
really
didn't play till game 5.
Yeah.
No.
Tony Jones is another one that I would say definitely.
Well, the thing about Troy in 2018 too, Sean, is he didn't start off well.
Yeah.
He actually kind of struggled early, and then he missed that game against Pitt. And when he came back that next week, he was a completely different dude the rest of the way. I mean, he was. And I've said this before. You could argue late in the year, Chase was better than Miles, and Troy was better than Julian.
Yeah,
you can make that case. It's the least debatable, in my opinion, which is what made those tandems so good. Because as good as Julian was, if you're talking about Troy maybe being kind of as good or maybe better, that explains why Clemson could do nothing when they were on the field, and all of a sudden was able to hit bomb when Julian comes off the field. You know, so
I think Jalen Elliott was a very good player too that doesn't get talked about a lot. I think he, especially towards the end of his Notre Dame career, he played really good safety. And when he was able to I think that was the game in Yankee Stadium where he had the big
that first pick of their quarterback. Yeah. Just stepped in front of a slant, and they put pressure on him, stepped in front of a slant. That tandem of him and Alohi was very underrated. Very underrated. That was, I mean, until this year, and I would even argue you could make a case that secondary was better than this one, just because that fourth spot, that second safety, like cornerback, I'd take this year's group. Safety, I'd take that year's group. Best safety of all of them, probably Xavier, but the tandem of Alohi and Jalen was so good in 2018.
Yeah.
It was a different defense. Like that defense would those corners would not have been quite as good in this. Actually, Detroit would have been even better in this defense, but Julian maybe not quite as good, still good, But this is the only secondary to me that could match that one. That was a very underrated secondary nationally. That was a very good secondary that year.
Fight Mike 87. Thank you for the mailbag. What would be the biggest surprise? Faison leads all wide receivers in receptions, or Notre Dame only has one running back over 550 yards in rushing?
I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Faison leads them in receptions. I wouldn't predict it, but I wouldn't be overly surprised just because he's going to catch, the shovels, which count as catches. He'll catch screens. He could have 10 catches in a game for 87 yards, the way that Denbrock's offense goes at times. And you're like, a good game. That's all they asked him to do. He had converted like 4 third downs and had a couple jet sweep catches, because the way that Denbrock does the jet sweep is it's a shovel. Because then if it gets dropped, it's incomplete, not a fumble, which is smart. So you don't see as many people do the handoff jet sweep like they used to do. So I could see something like that. I'd be really surprised if they don't have, barring injury, they only have one running back go for over 5. Even with Riley at quarterback, I still would be surprised by that. I'm not going to lie to you. Very surprised.
Yeah, that would be definitely a bigger surprise. I agree. Chief Brody, thank you for the mailbag. Does ND or Marcus Freeman ever invite Jimmy back to campus? I don't see him much. Is that a Jimmy thing or an ND thing? Jimmy Clausen, my assumption is, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's Jimmy was back recently. I think this past season, I thought Jimmy was back. Jimmy just doesn't broadcast it like maybe some others. And Notre Dame doesn't necessarily broadcast it because Jimmy's not the manti uplifting type of figure, but I'm pretty sure I saw Jimmy at a game either this year or last year. To be honest with you, I doubt Jimmy would have come back during the Brian Kelly era, because I'm told that there were some bad feelings with Brian Kelly when Jimmy decided not to come back. So I would imagine, look, here's the thing you gotta understand. Jimmy left right when the Brian Kelly era started. I have heard from Sean, between the two of us, we've probably talked to close to 100 former players that have felt, that would readily tell anyone that would listen, we never felt we were welcome back the last 10 years. And that has completely changed with Marcus Freeman. Because I've had this conversation, people say, we know former players are supporting, let's have some real talk here, Sean. Former players are supporting Marcus Freeman because he's black. And I'll say to them, that's nonsense. They're supporting him because he actually is doing things to let them know we value you. You're not a burden to us when you come back. We are going to get you whatever ticket you need. He still has remember that meeting that got aired accidentally where he was meeting with all those? He still does that regularly, where he'll meet with all these former players. So they support him because he shows the proper respect for their role in building this program up in ways that Brian Kelly never did. And it wasn't just Brian Kelly. The school made it difficult. Like, there was a former great player that the school basically alienated so bad with the way they handled tickets that he was like, I'm pulling my support. I'm not buying season tickets for me anymore. This was before Marcus Freeman was head coach. Like, if I said the name, you guys would be like, dude, that's a Hall of Famer for Notre Dame. They treated him like that? Yes, that's what happened. So the school is now showing more support to those guys. That's why they support Marcus Freeman. That's why you're seeing more and more guys come back. It's because this guy gives a rip about us. He's genuine. Like, and you talk to players when they did talk to Brian Kelly, it's like, that dude, I couldn't trust that dude as far as I could throw him. You know what I mean? Like, there just was there was no respect there. There was no sense of value to who we are and what we've done. You think the only thing that matters is what you've done. Well, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us. Same thing with, from what I'm told how he was with Lou Holtz. Marcus was very much, coach, love you. Let's make you a part of this whole thing. So Marcus Freeman embraced the Notre Dame tradition in ways that Brian Kelly never did, including like not pronouncing the name of the school correctly in his opening press conference. you know. Notre Dame, he might as well hit him with the Dom. I mean, the way it was, right? And so that's why Marcus gets that support. And that's why you're seeing more guys coming back now that didn't come back before.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they weren't welcomed. I mean, look, if you give all your blood, sweat, and tears and you're an alum and you give money and you're treated disrespectfully, I understand. Be like, screw that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I've dealt with that a little bit with my high school. I went back to my high school recently, and they had all the names of all these players that played college sports. They had me on there. I'm like, you guys wonder why I got nothing to do with school. You know what I mean? You could say that's petty, but okay, sure. But
Right.
it's still how I feel. And so that to me was a big reason why you're seeing so many more players, because Marcus Freeman sought them out.
Yeah.
He sought out the former players. Even guys that played for Brian Kelly didn't feel super welcome coming back unless there was something in it for Brian Kelly.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, Sean, and I know you can back me on this because I know you've talked to a lot of those guys, some that I've talked to, some that I haven't. And that's really what it comes down to. This guy tells us that we matter, that we're going to be part of whatever he's building. So, yeah, I want to be part of that. That's why you see so much former player support for Marcus Freeman, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Jesse Ferguson, thank you for the mailbag. What's more likely, in your opinion, Notre Dame having a sound pass blocking offensive line or a physical run blocking offensive line in 2024? If you had to choose one or the other, which would you choose?
Why don't you take this one first, Sean? I just talked for like 45 straight minutes.
I'm thinking like big picture playoffs.
Let's talk for 2024 only.
I'm going to say they're already big and physical. I think they're physical players. So if I had a choice, I would take the pass blocking offensive line strictly for the pass game and what it needs to be in a playoff situation against a really good team. I think Notre Dame's going to be able to run the ball. And based upon what they do, whether it's inside zone, outside zone, I don't think this Notre Dame offensive line at this point or early in the season is going to be required to be just like this bulldozing offensive line. I think the weapons that they have, there are going to be a lot of ways that they can attack teams without them having to do that. And it's hopefully by the end of the season, they become that balanced run offensive line, pass offensive line that can go ahead and make an impact in the playoffs. So I would choose the pass blocking early. I would choose that if I was going to choose between one of the two. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I think.
Yeah.
Because you're not saying that they're bad. I hope they're not saying that they're bad. So, they're just better.
Which one is? Yeah, I to me, I would take the makeup of this team. I would probably go with the physical run blocking O-line, just because I feel like I could do enough schematically to pass pro. If I could just go out there and like 2017 dominate people on the offensive line, you know what? I look at it like this, Sean. Which line would you rather have? 2013 mediocre run block, solid run blocking team, but only gave up 8 sacks all year. You remember, Zach Martin and Chris Watt and that group, or the 2017 O-line, which just could run on anybody and was solid in pass pro, but not great. I'd take 2017 because, number one, I don't know how you stop this team with Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, and Jadarian Price if I've got a really physical, punishing run blocking O-line. As long as they're not terrible in pass pro. Because I can move the pocket. There's enough things I can RPO it. There's a lot of things I can do to get the ball out to my wide receivers that don't require me to have to pass pro for 4.5 seconds. You know what I mean? Just because the makeup of this team. Now, there are other years, like if we're talking about the 09 team, give me an elite pass blocking unit. You know what I mean? So it depends on the year also. This particular team, I just kind of feel like if they can just kind of come out and be a dominant physical offensive line team with the makeup of the players they have, that's going to be a good sign. Plus, to your point, Sean, if we're actually looking at it at how football actually works, which is like you evolve, if you can establish, and this is where we're on the same page, if you can establish that physicality early, eventually you become solid in pass pro and they were going to be pretty good at that point in time.
And then I honestly think the strength of these young guys is the fact that they want to run block. I mean,
it's their personality.
It's the personality. So I just don't see that being an issue. The question we have is pass block, right? So I'm like, yo, I would much rather them become or be really good at that, because that eases my questions, because I think naturally they're going to be good at run blocking as a unit. They're just big, talented, athletic, physical guys. So
agree. All right, Sean, we got two more. This is one from Nikki's kind of reworded this question a couple times, so we'll go with the most recent one.
Let's Nikki D21, thank you for the mailbag. How does Kenny become the man if he doesn't get reps? To gain experience, you need the chances. Kenny, if given the chance, could be one of the best quarterbacks Notre Dame has had in a long time. Who said he wasn't getting reps?
Well, that was part of the debate, I think, that they were having. He had said it earlier. He was basically talking about, like, he said, I feel Kenny is going to get passed over and then leave. I've always said I think he is the best of the bunch. Ride with Kenny. He will end up being a dude. So I think he's basically just saying, like, he doesn't think he's going to get a shot, basically, is kind of what he's saying. So, I mean, that's fine. And look, Sean, I think that's a fair criticism until we see it, because we have seen this at Notre Dame in the past. You know, but as we said to kick off the show, Kenny got plenty of chances today to do that. What kind of impression did he make? Because here's the thing, Son. Sometimes your window may only be a game, a practice. Fair or not. I mean, you know, what if Lou Gehrig goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts whenever he's filling in for Wally Pipp? Is getting pipped an expression now the way it used to be? You know what I mean? Like, there's all those type of things where you can look back. You know, is Tom Brady if Drew Bledsoe doesn't get hurt? You know what I mean? Like, these are questions we don't know the answers to, because when those guys got their chance to shine, they stepped up and they shined. That's the reality of it.
That's life, right? Everybody doesn't get to start off at the same point in life or have the same advantages, but you work with what you have.
Right.
Kenny Minchie made an impression on scout team. Yeah. He started buzzing last year because of his work on scout team during the season.
Right.
He took advantage of his situation. So I'm not about to go with this narrative that Notre Dame is not about to give him a fair shot to make an impression, because I think it's a lot of ways you can make an impression. Malik tells this story all the time. Will Fuller should have been on the field a much sooner than he got on the field.
Mm-hmm.
But he forced his way. When he finally got a few snaps against Michigan State, he didn't come out with crazy
2013.
Stats. Yeah, he didn't have crazy stats, but it was just what he did and what he drew on film. Everybody was like, okay. And it's like he has an opportunity like today. Today should have been a day that they look at the film and it's like, all right, guys. Like, I know we were thinking this, but this kid isn't making it. It's I mean, it is literally life.
Today's the only chance Kenny Minchie ever gets, then that's a problem, right? I mean, so, like, I understand the point that you're making. In theory, that's how it should be. But the fact is it's not always that way. And if the only chance you get is, well, I did great on scout team, then you're not really getting that real chance. So that's my thing, Sean, is until we see it, there should be some level of skepticism, but we also shouldn't just assume the way that Nikki does that he's not going to get it. I think it's an unknown how much of a chance that they get. This was the whole reason you and I debated this for like 20 minutes the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's at least enough out there to make us at least question it, right? And so
he keeps he keeps talking about first team reps. Kenny Minchie was a freshman. He didn't deserve first team reps.
He's talking about coming up this spring.
No. My point was he's trying to discredit what I said about scout team. He deserved to be the scout team quarterback last year.
Correct.
That's it. That's where his opportunity was going to
My
come.
issues were more with how they used him later in the year. They should have used him in the bowl game. And that's another thing you and I brought up.
Remember we said after Clemson,
right,
Steve should have started. Kenny should have gotten opportunities and had packages in the Sun Bowl.
Right.
That's development.
Right.
That didn't happen.
Right.
So for whatever reason,
to me, there's extremes to this debate, and it's like with a lot of other things, he's not going to get his chance. Well, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. And then everybody gets a chance. Like that was the thing we heard a lot in Brian Kelly's tenure, which is, look, you get your chance in practice. Not everybody gets a chance in practice. Like, we're living in fantasy land if you think that some kid's going to go from scout teamer one week to starter the next week because he if that's true, Xavier Watts would have been starting as a freshman at wide receiver, because we heard I heard from parents of defensive backs that were like, they can't cover this 82 kid. I don't know who this kid is, but my kid keeps telling me how they can't cover this kid in practice. You know what I mean? And nothing, right? So it should not be assumed that, every kid got his chance. No, this kid did not get his chance. I've made this case about Malik in 2016. I don't think Malik was given a real chance to win that starting quarterback job, because they built an offense that was more tailored to what Deshaun does well and not what Malik does well. Well, of course Deshaun's going to win that quarterback battle. It was a rigged game. So he said, well, Malik had his chances. No, he didn't, because I was at all the practices, and Malik outplayed Deshaun at every single practice that we went to. And I told people, there's something going on with Deshaun. This is not the kid we saw last year. I got hammered, people talking about me saying, and look what happened. Deshaun was not the guy he was the year before.
Because it was handed to him. Because it was handed to him.
He was allowed to go act however he wanted and do whatever he wanted. He was still going to be that guy.
Yep.
Right? And so to me, it's like, no, it was a rigged game. And so maybe this one is rigged as well. Maybe it isn't. We don't know. I'm simply saying it better not be. Because as I said before, if Steve Angeli wins a starting quarterback job, then I'm good. Notice what I said. Wins it. Not becomes the starter or is handed the starting. If Kenny Minchie gets his shot, and CJ gets his shot, and Riley gets his shot, and Steve gets his shot, and Steve is the better guy, I was wrong about Steve. Let's roll. Let's go win a championship. Right? But if Steve's the guy because you're going to tell me that Kenny didn't play well enough, not you, just generally speaking, well, Kenny didn't play well enough on the second team to earn first team reps. Bull crap, because he's not playing with the second team, with the first team talent. Flip the script. I mean, how many times have you and I said this, Sean? Trade quarterbacks in 2018 and that game is completely different. Right. So you have to admit then that the quality of the players around you can dictate the job that you do. Right. And if one guy's playing on this roster and this guy's playing on this roster, then guess what? That's going to be an advantage for you. So that's not giving a guy the same opportunity. Now, if he didn't get first team reps because he's late to meetings and he's not doing the work and he's not doing this, then he did get his shot and he didn't do the things to earn those first team reps. So again, there's all this different type of stuff that goes in with this. But as long as a job is won, I don't really often care who wins it, as long as it's genuinely won. That's my only beef. That's my only beef, Sean. But my thing is, to Nicky, don't assume he's not going to get that shot. Right? I think it's too early to assume that. I have some concerns about what comments that Marcus Freeman said, but I also said later in the show as well, this could also be Marcus's way of challenging these younger players to say, okay, what do you got? Give me a reason to do this. Because as I said in that show, Sean, mind games are a big part of a head coach's job and an offensive coordinator's job, especially with a quarterback, because I'm going to put you in situations. That's why I said what I would have done is Steve's my first guy, but the next practice, Steve's with the threes. Why? Because I want to see what Steve's got mentally. How does he handle that? Does he get in his feelings and pout all day because he's now with the threes? Or does he go down there, get those boys rocking and rolling, and this is the best the threes have looked all year? You know what I mean? Those are all parts of the learning process, and sometimes it's not even about the kid that you're giving the reps to the ones. I need to find out what I got in this kid. And then I got to find out if this kid can get that shine of the being with the first team, and can he go out and roll? So that's my thing. But if you just stick a guy on the third team all year and say, well, he never gave me a reason to be with the ones, it's like, well, that's I'm just to say to Nicky, don't assume that he's not getting a shot.
That's the biggest. But if that's the case, now you're saying something bigger. Now you're saying something about Marcus Freeman
and
your
Mike
boy
Denbrock.
and Mike Denbrock, and that I won't even hold it against them based upon the previous 2 years, because I think this situation is totally different.
Way different.
Totally different. I'll say it again. I've said it a year ago this time. I was telling people, yo, Steve Angeli does not look good. It just from warm-ups, I don't see it. And what he's done for himself in 1 year speaks volumes to me about the work ethic and the belief that a young man has in himself. And if you can't respect that as a fan of the program, I don't care if you don't believe that physically he can do X, Y, and Z. Respect the work that he and Gino Gaduli have done for him to be at this point. For us to say Notre Dame can win regular season games and get to the playoffs with him as the starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm. And win in the playoffs. Like, because this thing is like, I don't want us to keep saying like the goal is to get to the playoff, right? Because we've established all 4 of these kids can get you there. It's get us to the playoff in a position where we can compete with anybody.
Exactly.
And yes, I personally think that in 2024, the pecking order of guys that I think gives Notre Dame the best chance to win a championship, it's Riley, just as of today, March 27th. Riley, Kenny, CJ, Steve. And CJ simply because he's a year younger than Kenny. They're both incredibly talented. That's my belief system, right? However, if Steve proves himself to be better, I'm good with that. I'm going to give you my evaluation of him. Sean will as well. I still, even though Steve's been better than I thought he was going to be, I still don't think he's as talented as those other guys. But if he proves himself to have that it thing that you were talking about, hey, God, I don't care how the ball comes out of your hand, but when it's on Saturdays, man, that dude's got it's going to go win you football games. All right, let's roll then. Let's go win some football games. You know,
I didn't think I would ever come to the point to say what I just said about Steve Angeli. I didn't see it. I didn't. I didn't think I would be sitting here a year later in spring ball saying, yo, you got to tip your cap.
And why? He took advantage of the opportunity he had. He got a chance in that ball. Like, I didn't give a rip what Steve Angeli did and mop up minutes against those other teams. And there's my love of what he did in the bowl game only goes so far because of, but still, it's still a starting opportunity at the University of Notre Dame in a bowl game. It's not the same pressure as playing Ohio State or USC, but it's still pressure. And he handled it calmly, cool and calmly, and played good football. To your point, I didn't know that Steve Angeli had that in him as a redshirt freshman. Would you, if I'd have told you that Steve Angeli would have stepped in for the backup as a junior, senior, and played in a game like that and played well, I'll tell you this: he played a whole lot better in his one start as a redshirt freshman than Ian Book played as a redshirt freshman in 2017 when he stepped in when Brandon Wimbush got hurt against a 3-9 North Carolina team. Now, Ian only had a week to prepare, so I mean, it's not apples to apples, but you get my point. Ian Book went on to have a pretty good career at Notre Dame. Everybody knows my feelings on Ian, but he went on to have a pretty good career. So, you know, maybe Steve becomes that guy, but as long as it's one, it's again, I don't care if it's Riley, Kenny, CJ, Steve. As long as the positions are one, that's all I care about. Let's finish up with this, Sean, because I promised Irish Fan 15 that I would answer this on Monday. I told him I'd answer it today. So
Irish Fan 15, Mailbag BD. What are your short and long-term goals for IB? Love what you guys have built here with both quality and community. Thanks for all you guys do.
I appreciate that. Well, short-term, Sean, it's a reconfiguring of the staff, which you and I have talked about. I've sat down and talked with Ryan about it. I've talked with other people about it. You know, we're going to hope to hear soon. I'm hoping actually next week, I'm hoping to put a post out about looking to hire contributors, recruiting contributors, and writing contributors. I'm going to, you know, people that just kind of, you know, write a couple articles a week, an article a week, and you know, you get a rev share kind of thing for that. I'm looking to hire someone as an editor, which would be more of a set payment amount to help edit podcasts every day and edit the YouTube show and stuff like that. Because I'm trying to free myself up to get back to producing more content. As you know, Sean, I'm not happy with the amount of content I'm producing at Irish Breakdown. because I have all these other things that have to get done. Now, some of that stuff is always going to be me. The business stuff, the deals, all that, that's always going to be on my shoulders, and I want it on my shoulders. But some of this other stuff, I'd like to have some help people that can help with graphics and socials and things. So eventually I want to kind of expand in that regard. And so then I can get back to making the videos that I've been doing recently a regular thing, like weekly, right? During the season, I want to be doing a ton of stuff like that. I don't want to have to edit 5 podcasts between the end of the show on Saturday and Tuesday. I want to be breaking down film, grading stats. I don't want to have to rely on Pro Football Focus anymore for pressure numbers. And I want to be doing all that stuff. And so, but I can't do that right now. So that's the one thing, is kind of expanding the staff a little bit and just, finding some people that can help. And eventually some of those writing opportunities may turn into full-time. They may turn into, co-hosting positions. I mean, so I'm open to all that. We're always looking for talent and expand our board. So that's short term. And then long term, I'd like to have a bigger staff of full-time people to help with those aspects of it, and expand kind of our reach in that regard. Have someone who's more, who's much better at putting out social media content and driving revenue and driving size and things like that. And so, because that's never something I'm going to be great at. Can make cards for the shows and graphics for the shows and things like that. So I'm always looking for more of those type of things, and then finding ways to put value on the work that those people do. And so that's part of the long term. And then I'm always trying to figure out ways we can make our content better. That's obviously part of it, is how can we make the shows better? How can we emphasize this? I've tried talking to my wife about a few things that I'd like her help with, but it's hard for her to do because she runs her own business as well. So we'll always kind of do those things. And the other thing too that I want to start doing more of, Sean, and we're going to kind of start doing this next week. We're going to have Coach Gumpf back on next week on Thursday. I just finalized that thing today. We're going to raise money next Thursday. We're going to have her on. We're going to talk about her softball team, talk about their strikeout cancer fundraiser. And last year, I think we raised a little over $1,000 that I ended up writing a check to them for that. So we'll do a lot of that. And that was just people that gave us money. There was also people from our show that then just directly donated to them. So they were very happy about that. They said they had their biggest fundraising year ever, and I'd like to think we were part of that. And I want to start doing more of that stuff. I mean, we've done it a couple times, but not the degree that I want. I feel like I've been blessed with a platform, and when we have used it to impact the community, we did. And we raised over $10,000 with our first Thanksgiving push, to the point where we had so much money left over that I just kind of had to write a check to the Boys and Girls Club. Here's the money, use it how you want. Because we had given every amount of food and clothing to anyone in the community that had asked for it, but we had money left over. And so we have a great community in that regard, Sean, where they've stepped up every time. And, I want to do more of that more often. But again, it's hard for me to plan all that when I'm also the editor, the show producer, the content creator, the check signer, the deal negotiator. You know what I mean? Like, so if there are some of these things I can get off my plate and find some help, then that would be good. So that's what we're going to be looking for and trying to expand. So again, we'll have something out next week is the plan, where I let people know I'm looking for recruiting contributors. I'm looking for team contributors. I had a young lady reach out about statistics. I emailed her a while ago, haven't heard back. I've tried maybe reach out to her again, where she's like a data analyst and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, look, if there's some things we can do, let's do it. Just trying to mix things up. And then of course, people that can help, production. Cause I can't do this show. We're 3 hours and 38 minutes in. When we're done, I got to go cut up the show, edit it, clean it up, put in the ads, do all that. That's another hour and a half. And then I have to then try to go cut up the video. What else am I going to get done today? And so it just makes it hard. So if I can find some people to help out with that, then that allows me to then focus more on what type of content are we putting out? Because I felt like early on, Sean, we were kind of trailblazers in this sphere. But now I'll just be honest with y'all. I've told y'all, I feel like we're getting a little stale. I'm just going to be, Sean and I have talked about this. He knows, where we're not as thinking outside the box as much as we used to. Well, I want to change that. and get back to that. That's why I'm putting out these videos, because I don't think you can get that anywhere else. What makes IB special? I think the community makes us special, and I don't want that ever to change. I want to enhance that. I think the type of analysis we can provide is unique. I want to enhance that. I want to force every other site to have to go hire some former player in order to somewhat match the things you know what I mean? Like, I want them to constantly be reacting to us. And I mean that as a compliment. And it is taken as a compliment. I had somebody tell me that started a show like, hey, my boss told me to watch your guys' show and figure out how a way they could do that. I take that as a tremendous, somebody's like, oh, that they shouldn't be. I'm like, that's exactly what I want it to be. That's a compliment. You don't understand. That's a compliment. That's like saying, hey, I think Nick Saban's doing a great job as a coach. I want to win like that someday. That's not an insult. That's a compliment. And I appreciate and respect that. But I want us to be doing more of that, and putting out better content, putting out more quality content. That's a big thing for me, a really big thing for me. So, Sean, we've talked about, and then finally, after we kind of get that rolling, I still want to build CFB Nation up as well. We just haven't been able to spend as much time on that just because I always said, I will never sacrifice IB for CFB Nation. And because I don't have IB where I want it, I haven't been able to focus as much time on CFB Nation. But that's eventually going to be there too, where we start doing more stuff over there. But I would like to do more stuff over there. It's hard to do that when it's like, Sean, how many times have you got a text from me at 3:00 in the morning? Like somebody's like, you posted that running back video the other day, or that like 2:30 in the morning, I'm putting that video up. And I was like, oh shoot, I probably shouldn't have put that up. I thought it was like 11. You know what I mean? It's like, oh crap, it's 2:30. So
yeah, man.
If I get some of this off my plate, then I can, I can have a little bit better quality life too. But then get back to because like Sean, I feel like I've gotten away from what made me.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to that, and not just because of but for me, for my benefit, I'll be happier that way.
Yeah.
And I think people will be happy that way. So like I've had some people that I have in my eye on as far as, maybe can help us out, and I want to provide platforms for people who maybe would be good at this, but just don't know how to get in there. And so there's some different ways I'm trying to do that. So anyway, Sean, I wanted to have that one last because I knew it would be a little bit of a longer answer, but anything you'd like to add to all that?
No, continue as always to support. We appreciate your support of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Go over to boards.irishbreakdown.com for all of your information that you need. It's well worth the investment. Everyone will tell you, man, the best covering Notre Dame football, the entire staff, Brian, Vince, Jesse, Sean, myself. We love what we do. And even though, as he just laid out, things especially for him, can get busy. I guess the word a little professionally constipated, if I can say it that way.
I always felt like, Sean, when you get to the point where you feel like you got it all figured out, is probably the time you should figure out something else to do because you're bored. And I'm not one of those people that's like, you should find satisfaction in your job. Well, some people need to do a job and do it well because they take pride in what they do because that's their means for taking care of their family. I've been blessed to be in a situation where I have to do that, but I also get to do something I love. And I have the ability to make sure that we're doing it in a way that we also find joy.
Yeah.
And this, my joy has been lost the last 6 to 8 months for a lot of different reasons, stuff going on personally and in the job. So it's like, I want to get back to that because when I'm finding joy, I feel like that means the content is going to be better for other people. And, and being able to use this platform to make more of an impact in the community is something we have not done a good enough job of.
No.
We've talked about it a lot, but talk does nothing. Action does something. And so I just feel I'm at that point where I'm just not happy with when people say, you guys put out more content, anybody else, volume does not equal quality.
Yeah.
And I don't think our quality has always been as good. Like I've had more in the last 6 months. I've probably had more shows. I'm like, dude, I just did not bring it today than I had the entire time up until here, including my time back with Lou at BGI. Right. Like You got to think about some of the content I've been a part of, dude. I used to get to do shows with Lou Emoji, right? I mean, how blessed was I, to be in that room? Now, some people said maybe you should have talked less and let Lou talk more. Fair, right? Fair. But like, I've been blessed, but it's just like, I don't feel like my A game has been what it needs to be. And IB's A game hasn't been what it needs to be. But we're going to get back to that. That's the good thing is if you don't like your circumstance, then change it. And that's what we're going to do.
Because the expectation doesn't change on our end. We expect to give you the very best.
And it not be close. That's our goal. And when you consider that we're going against guys like Tim Prister and Tim O'Malley and, people who I have a great deal of respect for, then, like they set a bar. Well, okay, let's us match it. And then I want them to say, okay, Driscoll's doing this. Now we got to do it. Okay, O'Malley brought the heat today, baby. Prister came out with a fire article today. Now we got to, and it's a great competition of people that we respect. And I just think when we're doing that type of content and Priester's being great at what he does, and I'm being great at what I do, and other guy, Matt Freeman, who does recruiting somewhere. If Ryan Roberts, if we're all doing the best we can, then guess what that means for the Notre Dame community? If we're all kind of like,
hey, it's enough meat on the bone.
Not fighting each other, screw those guys, but just like, hey man, I know I got to work today because this guy's working today. I got to produce this because I know this guy. That makes it great for the Notre Dame fan base, and that's kind of where we're at. And I'm just not happy with the what we've done. I'm just being real. I've told y'all I'd always be honest with y'all. And Sean knows it because he and I have had how many conversations have you and I had the last 2 months about all this, Sean?
Very extensive conversations. So almost on a daily basis. So
so we're working on it. We're working on it. So So anyway, that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, y'all, boards.irishbreakdown.com. You are missing out. If you have not watched, I had a 5-minute video and then 2 20-minute videos of me just breaking down film. Some of it's still shots, but a lot of live clips. And that's why it's only on the message boards, because it's live shots, all 22, breaking down film, diagrams, talking about it, explaining it, all of it. But you can only get it on the premium message board. Sean, you watched it. Was that good stuff? I mean, did you enjoy that? I think you did. We talked about it.
Yeah.
So definitely want to check that out. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you all again very, very soon. Tomorrow, in fact, on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.